What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 9 Saw Chapter 201 Decapitation Meal Advertisement. Why should we withdraw from Rogue Town? In the square of Rogue Town, a man lighting a cigar said disdainfully. Directly in front of him, Smoker also lit a cigar. His face was gloomy and he didn't speak. That's right, Rogue Town is our home, why should we evacuate? That's right. The people around were booing. It's said that pirates are here to ask for it, but isn't there your marine in Rogue Town? That's right. Are we raising you marines just to make ends meet? They didn't stop the pirates when they came, but instead forced us to leave our hometown. It's really disappointing. I don't care about the golden lion or the white lion, I won't leave anyway. Just. Bang. The man who was still echoing was instantly knocked to the ground by a burst of white smoke. Smoker's figure appeared in front of him, looked around, and said gloomily. This is no time for joking. The golden lion was from the same period as Roger. He is a legendary pirate. If you have read the newspapers, you should know what happened in Marineland. What happened? Help, Marine hit someone. No matter what happens, you Marine will take care of it. The crowd was still quarreling fiercely, and no one noticed that the sky was gradually getting darker. In the sky of Rogue Town, a small black dot fell on the execution platform from above. The golden lion lowered his head. Just as Warring States predicted, his first stop was Rogue Town. He squatted down and stretched out his hand to touch the wooden floor of the execution platform. That guy Roger died here. It's so boring. You are the only man I recognize. How could you die in such a small place? I will never agree to it. His tone was low, with an unexplainable charm, as if he was missing Roger in the past. Gia ha, let's get to know each other in this place. Who is this person? How dare you go to the execution platform without permission? Advertisement under the execution platform, several Marine soldiers surrounded the golden lion. If it hadn't been for the golden lion suddenly roaring to the sky just now, they would not have noticed that the golden lion was already on top. The golden lion slowly stood up from the execution platform. As he gradually stood up, the sky behind him became gradually gloomier. 7 small islands of different sizes suddenly appeared in the sky above Rogue Town. Unlike the small islands that appeared in Marineland, these small islands are uninhabited by any living creatures. They are just isolated islands in this sea. These small islands were suspended in the air, blocking the sunlight without a trace, and the entire square was plunged into shadow. Why is it so dark? The Marine soldier who was directing the evacuation blinked in confusion, and at the same time turned his gaze to the sky. His face was full of disbelief, and he stretched out his hand and slapped himself hard in the face. The crisp sound reached his ears, and along with the pain on his cheek, he was convinced that he was not dreaming. Is this fake? Looking up, I saw a huge skull pirate flag planted on the edge of each island. This pirate flag is backed by the rudder of the ship, with a golden mane growing under the skull, like a majestic golden lion. As a Marine soldier in the branch, his performance was even worse than that of his main branch. He only felt a wetness in his crotch. The pirates are coming. His voice was shocked, mixed with fear, and the sound was sharp, and it quickly reached the ears of the surrounding people who looked puzzled. Following Marine's gaze, their expressions changed greatly. The pirates were really coming. Is this a pirate? For most people in the East China Sea, they don't even know what a devil fruit is. Fortunately, they weren't stupid enough to forget the pirate flag. The quarreling crowd was stunned for a moment, and then dispersed in an instant. Run quickly, the pirates are coming. Smoker raised his head, looked at the small island suspended in the sky, and clenched his fists tightly. Is this the legendary big pirate? How should he defeat such a person? Taking a deep breath, Smoker turned into white smoke and flew towards the execution platform. As soon as he flew halfway, he was knocked to the ground by a huge fist. Ha, you little Smoker, why are you joining in the fun? Just leave this to me. Smoker held his belly and looked at Garp, who was wearing a white uniform. Behind him stood Karen carrying delicacies. Advertisement. Karen nodded slightly to Smoker, and Smoker smiled helplessly. As a graduate of the same class, Karen has already stood so far away, and he clenched his fists, deepening his desire to go to the new world with Karen. Garp? Gia ha, I haven't seen you for so many years, why have you become an old man? Above the execution platform, the golden lion looked down at Garp, with a mocking smile on his lips. Ha, although I am old, I am not disabled, unlike you who are old and disabled. Garp responded without any politeness. Gia ha, the golden lion laughed heartily at first, and then mocked. Who can say for sure what will happen in the future? Maybe you will be more disabled than me in the future, maybe today. Garp stepped on the moonwalk and reached the execution platform in the blink of an eye. It's a pity that you won't be able to see it that day because you won't be able to survive today. HMPH, after so many years of not seeing each other, your talk has become a lot better, but I don't know if your strength has deteriorated. You'll know later if you've regressed or not. Garp waved his hand and sat down directly on the floor. After a while, Karen flew to the execution platform from below carrying a dinner plate. The East China Sea is my territory. An old friend is here. If I don't treat him well, Roger will definitely laugh at me. As he spoke, he suddenly opened the dinner plate covering it, revealing the rich food inside. The aroma is overflowing and the colorful dishes of Madara sparkle with an alluring luster, making you mouth-watering. I specially asked someone to prepare this, Shiki. Garp laughed and teased. How about it, this is the decapitation meal I arranged for you. The Golden Lion smiled coldly. I think you came here with your own decapitated meal. Don't think that I don't know your little thoughts. You just want to delay me for a while so that the people here have time to escape. Garp was stunned for a moment, then laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, Shiki, you are right. This is Roger's hometown. I don't think you will let this place be destroyed in the battle. The Golden Lion also laughed. Garp, you are wrong. Don't forget the purpose of my coming here. Then why don't you do it immediately? Snort. The Golden Lion imitated Garp and sat on the floor, randomly grabbed a piece of fruit and put it into his mouth, and said casually. Are you planning to capture me alive? Garp sighed. Shiki, now you are not only a pirate, but also the real culprit behind the invasion of Marijoya. Chapter 202 The Crumbling Rog Town Advertisement. Really, if you didn't tell me, I would have forgotten. How about it? What I did was pretty powerful. At least I did it much more freely than Roger in this matter. The Golden Lion picked up a piece of meat and was about to put it into his mouth while Karen and Garp were watching, when he suddenly said, You won't poison it, right? Garp was stunned and laughed. Ha ha ha, what are you talking about? Don't you understand me yet? The Golden Lion looked at him suspiciously, then put the meat back. It is precisely because I understand that I am suspicious. Karen glanced at the Golden Lion in surprise. He didn't expect that the Golden Lion could keenly sense that something was wrong. When he came out with the food, Garp proposed to himself that the Golden Lion should eat the food he cooked. This made Karen feel incredible, because in his impression, Garp would not use such despicable means. People. We are Marine, and our first duty is to protect the people we protect. Garp saw Karen's doubts and continued to explain. What's more, I just want him to taste the most delicious meal in the world. What do I have? Wrong. Okay, you don't trust me. Garp puffed his beard and glared at the Golden Lion. Not to be outdone, the Golden Lion stared into Garp's eyes. Okay, in that case, you eat first. This is your meal. Why should I eat it first? You feel guilty if you don't dare to eat first. The two were arguing with each other like children. In the end, no one took off their chopsticks. The Golden Lion suddenly looked at Karen aside. This kid is your successor. I can feel that his potential is not inferior to that of you and me when we were young. Ahem, actually I am your successor. Karen was cursing in his heart, but remained calm on the outside, staring blankly at the two people arguing with each other. If the Golden Lion hadn't remembered Uda's name, he actually didn't intend to arrest him. In any case, the Golden Lion had helped him in disguise. From the moment the Golden Lion appeared, the stone in his heart had already fallen to the ground. For others, the outcome may be difficult to predict, but for him, victory is 100% his own. The Golden Lion's fruit ability is not of the animal type, but he is not Logia either. Garp laughed loudly. He is my eldest nephew. A generation will eventually grow old, but there are always people who are young. It seems that you also understand this. To be honest, I think your successor is very good and suits me very well. Appetite. The Golden Lion didn't answer, and he didn't know what he was thinking. The atmosphere gradually became depressing after a long time. Garp then said, Wouldn't it be nice to just become a legend? Why do you still appear in Marinavender? Advertisement Golden Lion said, Legend? I don't want to become a legend, I just want to stand at the top. Is this your choice? Gia ha ha ha. I have no choice, because there is only one answer from beginning to end. The Golden Lion stood up and his eyes became sharp. Come on, Garp, time has passed long enough, let's get started. Let's get started. Garp sighed, slowly stood up from the ground, and threw away his white cloak of justice. You are destined to lose this battle. The Golden Lion dismissed it. Gia ha ha ha, stop talking nonsense, don't forget that it took two of you to stop me 5 years ago. I am also two people now. Garp said calmly. You mean him? Gia ha ha ha, the kid is not qualified to intervene in the fight between the two of us. The Golden Lion seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He said that Karen had great potential, but it was only potential. Karen chuckled and said, Actually, I'm quite strong. As he spoke, the sparrow version of the bird on his shoulder turned into a black double-edged sword, which was held in Karen's hand. A sweeping aura erupted from Karen's body. Conquerors. There was a moment of surprise in the Golden Lion's eyes. He knew how rare it was to have a conqueror's marine in Marine. Gia ha ha ha, good boy, it's so interesting that you still have the heart to be king. Tell me, what kind of king do you want to be? Karen looked at him coldly. I don't want to be king, I just want to protect everything I cherish. In order to prevent another tragedy for my family, I have to strike first. Really, kid, just for such a ridiculous reason? Then let me show you the determination I have. Boom. A more tyrannical momentum instantly enveloped the entire Rog Town, and the people in Rog Town who had not yet successfully evacuated were instantly knocked unconscious. The black and red lightning spread crazily on the Golden Lion's body. With the Golden Lion as the center, Indescribable buildings in the streets of Rog Town were torn apart in an instant, but he exquisitely controlled the execution platform under his feet. The air seemed to be suffocated by this force. Advertisement. Jia ha ha ha. Have you seen it? This is the real power possessed by the strong men in this sea. He roared, his voice wild and full of arrogance. He raised his arms high and flew into the sky in an instant. Black and red lightning danced wantonly around him, illuminating the entire Rog Town and reflecting his twisted and fanatical face. The so-called dream is nothing but an illusory phantom. The Golden Lion looked down at the townspeople below in the air, his voice as shocking as thunder, with incomparable contempt and ridicule. Only strength can allow you to survive in this sea area and make you invincible. It's a pity that Roger didn't understand this, so he died, and I, the Golden Lion, Shiki, will make my legend great again in this sea. Jia ha ha ha, tremble, tremble, be afraid. As he spoke, the sword light under his feet began to flash with brilliant light, and an unparalleled pressure struck directly from his feet towards Rog Town below. The entire town was instantly enveloped by the mighty sword light, and the surrounding buildings were as fragile as paper and crumbling under this force. Shiki. At this moment, Garp's angry voice came from Rogue Town, and he jumped high from the execution platform. The right fist flashed with a dazzling light, like a flower blooming in the dawn, almost like the Golden Lion's sword. Iron fist impact. The sword light and the fist collided in the air, emitting dazzling rays of light that enveloped the entire sky. Rumble. The deafening impact echoed throughout the world, and the sky seemed to be frightened by this momentum. It began to become gloomy and covered with dark clouds, as if it was uneasy about this decisive battle. Lightning flashed across the air, accompanied by a deafening roar, and the entire ground in Rog Town was shaking. The power of the Golden Lion and Garp intertwined to form a huge energy vortex. A small island in the sky closest to the center of the impact actually disintegrated under the influence of this power. Countless pieces of rubble fell from the sky to the ground like meteors, devastating the entire Rog Town. The buildings in the town collapsed under the impact of this force, smoke and dust filled the air, and the originally quiet streets instantly turned into a mess. What happened to Malinfondo will happen again in Rogue Town. Chapter 203. Being caught with bare hands is 100% ineffective. Advertisement. Karen stood on the execution platform and slowly raised the Tibetan Fung in his hand. He didn't want to win in this humiliating way, but the Golden Lion caused too much harm to Rog Town, and he had to take action for the sake of the innocent people. Since his strength reached the level of a lieutenant general, he rarely used it when he was 100% empty-handed. The main reason was that this ability was too buggy. He needed to fight different strong men to stimulate his potential and increase his combat experience, but it does not mean that this ability cannot be used. Golden Lion, look at the sword. The hidden front fell slowly. The next moment, the Golden Lion, who was still fighting fiercely with Garp, appeared on the execution platform, knelt down on one knee, and knelt in front of Karen in a very funny posture. The Golden Lion felt his eyes blurred, and then his whole body seemed to be restrained by an unknown force, unable to move. He raised his head and stared blankly at the young Marine in front of him. Is this your devil fruit ability? Although it was a question, his tone was full of certainty. Jia ha ha ha, that's really interesting. When? Karen sighed slightly. You lose, Golden Lion. Loose? The Golden Lion looked at Karen with an idiot's eyes, and smiled ferociously. Jia ha ha ha, do you really think that the power of devil fruit is invincible? He was smiling, but he couldn't stop laughing, because based on his past experience, as long as his dominance is strong enough, the devil fruit's ability will not affect him. But this time, thinking of this, he mobilized all his strength again. But no matter how hard he exerted his strength, his body still firmly maintained this position, unable to move at all. Impossible, this is impossible, you can't be more domineering than me. Boom. He roared like a mad lion, his conquerors was fully activated, and his amazing momentum almost knocked Karen over. It's a pity that today's Karen is not the rookie who fought Shanks last time. Karen used all his consciousness and used his conquerors to resist the impact of the Golden Lion. After resisting for 3 minutes, the Golden Lion looked pale. Staring at Karen, his eyes were blood red. He is a Golden Lion, a real big pirate, but today he is like a wild dog, crawling under the young Marine. In the same place, the last person who knelt here was One Piece Roger. Advertisement. He couldn't accept the fact that a strong man he recognized was killed in the weakest East China Sea. But now, will he himself, the majestic Golden Lion Shiki, also end his life in this place? Shiki. Garp landed on the execution platform from the air, looking at the desolate posture of the Golden Lion. His expression was a little unbearable. Jia ha 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 ha, Jia ha 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 ha. The Golden Lion suddenly raised his head and laughed, causing tears to flow from his nose. Roger, you think I'll be like you? Jia ha ha ha, it's so ridiculous, Lousy is a Golden Lion. Admit defeat, Shiki, don't fight stubbornly. Garp took out a pair of shackles from his arms, and the Golden Lion could feel the strong ocean atmosphere on them just by glancing at them. Sea Tower stone shackles. He knew that once he was cuffed by it, he would completely lose the ability to resist. Admit defeat? Lousy has no option in life to admit defeat. Also, are you sure you want to cuff it for me? The golden lion suddenly looked up at the sky. No, to be precise, he was looking at the 6 islands suspended in the sky. His meaning is self-evident. Once he loses the ability to flutter fruits, the islands in the sky and Rog Town will receive a devastating blow. Shiki. Garp obviously understood what he meant. He roared angrily and began to accelerate rapidly. Gia ha ha ha, you don't really think you will win, do you? The golden lion stared at Karen angrily. Then, in Karen's shocked eyes, the entire execution platform suddenly flew up, flying higher and higher. It's the piao piao fruit that works. 100% being caught with an empty hand can only limit the opponent's posture, but cannot limit the opponent's ability to use it. In the air, the execution platform began to rotate crazily under the control of the golden lion. He seemed to want to use this power to throw Karen out. But is this possible? Karen tightly clenched the Zhang Feng in his hand, not giving the golden lion a chance. Kid, I don't know how you did it, but this power can only control my arms and legs. Advertisement. The golden lion grinned ferociously, and suddenly he howled in pain. The 2 swords that were half kneeling to support him began to shake crazily. The 2 famous knives that were already connected to his flesh and blood were being gradually pulled away. Scarlet blood slowly flowed along the handle of the knife, but it was quickly dried up by the strong wind. Laugh. As the 2 famous swords Yingju and Kumyu were completely separated, 2 scarlet bloodlines swayed in the air, like 2 rainbows, but the color was blood red, indescribably charming and weird. Immediately afterwards, the power exerted on him disappeared. He broke free from the shackles of being 100% free-handed. This is the first time Karen has been broken free since using this ability. Different from Shi Langzhong, Karen's 100% ability to be caught with bare hands is very restricted in this world. There are strict requirements not only for weapons, but also for people. He once faced Poseidons without arms and hands, and the answers he got disappointed him. Invalid. If the conditions cannot be met, his ability will be invalid. Rather than pretending to be like Li Jing, someone who can't even put his hands together is not worthy of being an enemy of Li. That's why Karen gave up this seemingly invincible ability and instead strengthened her body. But now, the golden lion who has lost his legs naturally does not meet the harsh conditions of being 100% killed with nothing. The execution platform gradually stopped rotating, and the golden lion that escaped Karen's control floated in the air. Blood gurgled out from the wound of the golden lion's broken leg like a fountain. The bright red liquid slowly dripped down his legs and soaked the execution platform. The blood hole at the wound was deep and terrifying, and the pale muscles and bones looked particularly dazzling in the pool of blood, making people shudder. 2 famous swords, Ying Shi and Kumyu, were originally in his hands floating in front of their eyes. His hands were trembling crazily, not knowing whether it was from pain or excitement. Old man, after so many years, it's time to fight side by side with me again. As he spoke, he firmly grasped the handles of the 2 famous knives with both hands. Boom! At the moment of clenching, his hands no longer trembled, replaced by an unparalleled firmness and determination, as if at that moment, all the pain and failure were invisible to him. He has never forgotten his identity. He is the golden lion Shiki. He is also a great swordsman. Chapter 204. The Power of the Lion. Advertisement. As the momentum of the golden lion continued to rise, a harsh storm suddenly arose, and the clouds in the sky roared, as if responding to his call. That powerful aura surged like ocean waves, impacting everything around it. The originally warm sunshine was swallowed up by dark clouds, and the sky became gloomy and depressing, as if even nature was trembling with his awakening. Several islands floating in the sky were ravaged by strong winds. The trees were twisted in the wind, and their branches and leaves were rolled up one after another, as if an invisible storm was sweeping over them. The dust on the ground was kicked up, forming rotating sandstorms, accompanying the power of the golden lion. Sand and dust filled the air, blurring the line of sight, but it could not conceal the powerful presence of the golden lion. Karen held the Tibetan Feng in her hand tightly and stared at the golden lion's every move. He could feel the terrifying aura emanating from the other party, which made his heart beat faster involuntarily. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. What a madman. Gia ha 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 ha, this is the feeling. The golden lion laughed wildly, with a crazy light shining in his eyes. He seemed to be completely immersed in his own world, enjoying the pleasure brought by this power. Only by truly holding the sword in my hand can I release the accumulated anger in my heart. As he spoke, he casually swung his sword, and a huge sword energy quickly fell on the sea surface, causing a turbulent wave. The huge waves spread around like landslides, and the sea surface was instantly torn into countless broken waves, with water splashing everywhere. The golden lion who once single-handedly challenged the entire Marineland is back. Shiki. Garp was suspended in the air on Moonwalk, staring at the golden lion. He had no idea that the golden lion would become so crazy. He stood in front of Karen and roared, "Come on, Shiki, let's start the battle that hasn't ended just now." The golden lion came back to his senses and looked at Garp, with a sneer suddenly appearing on his face. Garp, Gia ha 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 ha, let's not rush our battle. His figure suddenly rose to a higher level, and he said with a ferocious smile. Karen, right? You are the first person to bring me shame and humiliation. I will let you understand what true despair is. What is true power? Being stared at by the golden lion, Karen felt a chill rising from his spine, and he felt that his hairs stood on end. Shiki. Are you going to attack a junior? Garp blocked the golden lion's sight and protected Karen behind him. Advertisement. He is just a child. Karen's mouth twitched slightly and she glanced at Garp resentfully. Sure enough, when Garp said this, the golden lion became even more angry. Child? Lousy beats the child. As he spoke, a strong wind blew by, the golden lion and the execution platform rose rapidly, and soon Garp's figure disappeared. The golden lion pulls the battlefield into the deep sky with all his heart, and even Garp cannot stop him. This is the terrifying thing about Piao Piao fruit. If he hadn't wanted to escape back then, so what if it was Mlinfondo who could have stopped him? Damn. Garp stepped on the moonwalk and chased with his life. After flying upward for a full 2 minutes, Garp's figure completely disappeared, and the only thing that could be seen clearly was the red dragon sitting on the sea. There is the red continent. Gia ha ha ha, kid, let our game begin. The golden lion stepped on the void, Karen stood on the execution platform, and the two stood opposite each other. At the moment of eye contact, Karen's eyes flashed, and he raised the Tibetan Feng Hai in his hand. Today he only had a strong fighting spirit. God avoids. The black and red conqueror spread from his body, and combined with the hidden edge in his hand, it really seems to have the flavor of the original god's avoidance. Hearing this familiar name, the golden lion fell into a trance and was stunned for a moment. What are you talking about, kid? The golden lion's dazed moment was quickly swallowed up by anger. His eyes flashed with dangerous light, and the sword light suddenly erupted, heading towards Karen. Boom! Two sword energies collided in the air, causing an earth-shattering explosion in an instant. There was a deafening roar in the air, as if the whole world was shaking from this blow. The golden lion was indeed one of the strongest swordsmen last season. The sharp sword light made Karen stumble and narrowly escaped falling from the execution platform. Kid, I don't know where you heard this name, but it's so weak. Are you insulting this move? The golden lion holding its body steady was burning with rage, and its sword power was like a rainbow. Lion Thousand Slice Valley. His sword light drew arcs in the air, hitting Karen like a violent storm. The speed was so fast that Karen, who had just stabilized his body, was unable to parry, so he had no choice but to use his most proficient skills. Advertisement. Iron. The dense sword light annihilated Karen's body, but Karen remained motionless like a rock in the deep sea. However, the execution platform under him finally could not withstand the attacks of the two men and gradually disintegrated in the air. Strangely, after the execution platform disintegrated, it did not fall into the sea due to gravity, but instead turned into countless debris floating in the air. Damn it! Why is the golden lion so strong? He can't even defeat Luffy, who hasn't awakened yet. Karen was cursing secretly in his heart while resisting the golden lion's attack with difficulty. Mr. Oda made a mistake. Roger's moves are not what you Marines should use. A kid who doesn't even know how to pester actually tries to challenge me. Double sword style. Lion power. Wind fury. The golden lion roared. Sakuragi and Kushi were entangled, and a very strong tornado suddenly swept over, seeming to swallow everything in it. The wind roared, the sword light flashed, and the air was filled with the harsh sound of sword energy. Karen's cognition color is a crazy warning. Since the fierce battle with Katakuri, he has successfully unlocked the precognitive cognition color. The future results tell him that he cannot dodge. No longer hesitating at all, Karen unhesitatingly pushed her arm domineering energy to the extreme. The color of his skin changed rapidly, from the original yellow to black, and finally to a deeper black-purple. His muscles bulged and strength gathered in his arms, preparing for the coming impact. Iron block and golden bell. Karen shouted loudly, and a bright golden bell appeared out of thin air, covering his whole body tightly. Boom! At this moment, Golden Lion Shiki's sword light struck quickly like a burning meteor. It carries endless power, as if it is going to swallow up the whole world. The roar resounded throughout the world, and the golden bell collided with the sword light of the golden lion, just like two comets colliding in the universe, instantly triggering an explosion that shook the world. The surrounding air was torn apart, forming violent air currents. The sound was so loud that it even exceeded the limit of human hearing. Karen stood at the center of the energy and felt as if she was in a silent world. His ears were ringing and his vision was blurry, as if the whole world had stopped at this moment. Chapter 205 Miracle Reappears Advertisement. Gia ha ha ha, have you seen it? This is the real domineering power? The golden lion stood in the air and laughed wildly, his eyes full of arrogance. Karen shook his head, and the deafness in his ears gradually faded away. He is worthy of being a great pirate in the same period as Roger. As a former crew member of Rocks, the strength of Golden Lion will never be worse than that of Whitebeard. Even the strongest conqueror's Golden Lion can be used at will. If you really treat him as a Twilight Old Man, then you will definitely lose. However, your Marine Brat's performance is quite good, and you are qualified to be my opponent. The Golden Lion still expressed his affirmation of Karen's strength. He was secretly surprised that there were no more than 10 people in this sea who could survive his attack intact. And the marine kid in front of me is one of them. Gia ha ha ha, if you only have this strength, then I feel sorry for this. Marine's future, please die. As soon as he finished speaking, a passionate voice suddenly came from Karen. Like sunlight passing through the night, dawn quietly crosses the horizon. Whose figure travels through reincarnation? The road to the future is at your feet. Don't be sad, don't be afraid. Although the golden lion couldn't understand what language it was, he could tell that it was the little marine in front of him who was singing. What's this? The golden lion frowned slightly. As the king of the sea, he understood that all unknown things could be potential dangers. If it were anyone else, the golden lion might not have such a big reaction. But Karen, he had personally seen the strange ability that Karen had just used. That is an ability that even conquerors cannot escape. Are you singing? Golden Lion asked, looking wary. Advertisement. Karen didn't answer, but secretly felt the benefit of the music this time. This was the first time he used Vegapunk's audio for himself. After getting this speaker, he asked Vegapunk to record a few songs for him. And this song is exactly in line with his current experience. Compared with the last ringtone from the phone bug, this time both the sound and the sound quality are hundreds of times stronger. This time the bonus was much higher than last time, and he felt that his whole body was full of strength. He felt that every cell in his body was singing along with the music and beating to the beat of the melody. His heartbeat matched the rhythm of the sound perfectly. His consciousness was gradually immersed in this power, and he felt the invisible energy flowing in his body, as if the tide of the ocean was responding to his call. The feeling made him moan in pleasure. You are right, the feeling of power is fascinating. As he finished saying these words, his body's aura exploded violently, and a conqueror's domineering energy that could compete with the golden lion erupted from Karen's body. The two energies are constantly entangled and fighting in the air. The god of BGM strengthens not only his physical fitness, but also his spirit, consciousness, and recovery ability. What's going on? How can you be so domineering? The golden lion stares intently at the center of conquerors. After all the energy was released, he realized that it was not Karen who sang, but the singing voice came from Karen. He suddenly thought of the song that destroyed his plans in Marinaventer. What is your relationship with that girl named Uda? Golden Lion narrowed his eyes and asked again. This time Karen answered him. She's my daughter. Daughter, Gia, ha 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 ha, this really surprises me. It just so happens that Malinfando's revenge has been avenged together. Although he didn't know what the music was for, he didn't feel threatened. So he decided to strike first. He raised his hand and waved his sword, and the sword light drew a dazzling arc in the air. You could even see that the air was faintly distorted by this majesty, as if even the space was trembling with the power of the golden lion. Advertisement. The sword light went straight towards Karen, with an irresistible momentum, and seemed to tear him apart completely. Shishui Ranwu. Karen smiled coldly. He was not just an evader. Shishui Ranwu. Karen imitated the movements of the golden lion and turned his sword light into a dazzling arc. With his roar, the sword lights intertwined in the air, forming a beautiful and deadly picture, like two lion dances fiercely in the air, fighting for dominance. The golden lion was stunned. He didn't expect that this young man could imitate such a realistic move in a short period of time. Although Karen's moves are superficial, his power is very powerful, which is enough to make up for his lack of skills. Gia ha ha ha. Interesting, is this how you learned your divine avoidance? The golden lion laughed and stared at Karen with interest. It seems you are not useless. Karen ignored him, but focused on the golden lion's every move. He has never seen a real god, but today he saw the golden lion who was also a legend in the last century. He understood that this was a good opportunity. If he didn't die in the battle, he would make progress in the battle. He would never let go of the opportunity to learn Conqueror's entanglement. The golden lion seemed to see what Karen was thinking, and he roared. Gia ha ha ha, kid, if that's the case, just open your eyes and take a good look. Deadwood and Sakura's swords trembled crazily, conquerors wrapped around them, and red and black lightning jumped crazily in the air. Lousy is a double sword style lion power stormulous wind. A sneer appeared in Karen's mouth. Do you really think I can't do anything about it? He secretly used the power of Guhuo bird, and an ice sword made of rainwater solidified in Karen's hand. In an instant, black armor covered his body. Due to the domineering setting, famous swords are only useful in the first half of the park in the Grand Line. In the New World, after all, everything can be entangled with armed colors. Except for some famous swords with special abilities, all famous swords are not as useful as armed colors. The so-called famous sword is just a decoration for a strong man, just to be able to hold a weapon when he mentions it later. Double sword style lion power stormulous wind. The same move was performed by Karen. Although it lacked some special effects, it was still enough to bluff people with the blessing of his unparalleled skills. The two forces collided in the air, instantly erupting with a deafening roar, and the surrounding space seemed to collapse at this moment. Karen felt a huge impact coming and was almost knocked away, but he gritted his teeth and felt a fearless fighting spirit in his heart. There is no reason why I would lose to an old man in endurance competition. Chapter 206. Feeling the Conqueror's entanglement advertisement. Below, Garp rode the moonwalk in spite of the storm. He gritted his teeth, and the roaring sound above his ears made him unable to tell whether it was thunder or the aftermath of the battle. His heart was filled with a sense of urgency, knowing that he must arrive before the battle was over. The confrontation between Karen and the Golden Lion has lasted for too long. He knows the fear of the Golden Lion and the importance Marine headquarters attaches to Karen. Damn Shiki, Karen, hold on, Garp muttered silently in his mind, and the moonwalk under his feet was as fast as lightning, quickly approaching the center of the battle. At the same time, the port of Rog Town. The strong wind howled and roared past, as if it was about to tear the whole world apart. The wind is like a ferocious beast, roaring and tearing everything apart, making people feel endless fear and despair. The sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning pierced the sky, lighting up the entire port, and the thunder sounded like thousands of horses galloping, deafening. What a big storm! Go quickly! Can't stay! Is this really just an ordinary storm? There are also islands floating in the sky. What is going on? Escape quickly! People in the port fled by boat. No matter how strong the storm was, they did not dare to stay in Rog Town because they all saw what a horrible thing happened when the disintegrated island in the sky landed in Rog Town. The sea was like a washing machine, raging crazily at everything around it. The waves rolled, and huge waves hit the pier one after another, making a deafening roar. Each impact felt like it was tearing the dock to pieces. The ships in the port were swaying in the storm, as if they might be engulfed at any time. The cables were tight, making a creaking sound. The sails were blown by the wind and might break at any time. It's over. There's no way to escape from such a big storm. Some people are desperate. God, save us. Someone prayed to the gods. Ha ha ha, this is God's punishment for our sinful place. Someone was laughing maniacally. What happened? I don't believe it was a pirate attack. Some people are angry, some people are confused. Advertisement. But no one told them what they should do. As an ordinary person, in this sea, even if you do nothing, fate will still ruthlessly control everything. Unless you have the ability to escape fate. Otherwise, being ordinary itself is sinful. Smoker stood where the execution platform had been, staring into the sky and not seeing the execution platform that had long since disappeared, letting the rain drip on his cheeks. What a terrifying power, what a terrifying momentum. At this moment, he seemed to have returned to many years ago, when he was still young and he had witnessed the fall of One Piece Roger in Roger Town. How similar. Although Roger was kneeling on the execution platform at that time, Smoker could feel that his momentum was still like a king, a true king. Do you want my treasure? If you want it, I can give it all to you. Go find it, the Grand Line. I put everything in the world there. From then on, the Great Pirate Era began. Countless young people flocked here for the illusory treasure. They abandoned their families and everything. It brings only disaster and bitterness. Smoker clenched his fists. I must end this bad era. At this moment, a faint sound of footsteps suddenly came slowly from the deep streets. The footsteps that should have been lost in the heavy rain turned out to be particularly clear in the overwhelming heavy rain. His dark green coat was facing away from Smoker and was blurry in the heavy rain. Smoker rubbed his eyes to make sure he saw it correctly. He frowned slightly and shouted, "Hey, why don't you leave yet? It's very dangerous here." The other party made no move and continued to go its own way towards the depths of Rog Town. Didn't you hear? The island above will fall at any time? Seeing that the other party was walking further and further away without any intention of stopping, Smoker immediately cursed. Are you deaf? The other party paused slightly and continued walking deeper. Smoker gritted his teeth and had no choice but to rush deeper into the street. Double sword style lion power, chopwave. Double sword style lion power, chopwave. One after another, two voices roared in the air. The two sword lights vented their energy wantonly in the air, forming two circular vacuums with the Golden Lion and Karen as the center. As long as the rain falling in the sky fell into the vacuum between the two of them, it would instantly turn into steam. Under the pressure of this force, even the power of nature had to retreat. Advertisement. The figures of the Golden Lion and Karen intertwined in the sword light, like two lightning bolts, changing rapidly and dizzyingly. I have to say, you are really a genius. He unleashed several big moves in succession, each time without holding back. Even the Golden Lion was a little out of breath. On the other hand, Karen on the opposite side had a calm face, and it seemed that he had not exhausted any physical strength at all. This guy's physique is not inferior to that of me when I was young. The Golden Lion was secretly surprised, but still looked disdainful on the surface. It's just that your comprehension is so poor. I've given you so many tricks, but you can't even learn a conqueror's entangle? Karen was slightly startled, but he didn't expect that the Golden Lion had already seen his intention. He was also helpless when talking about this. How could his understanding be so great? Or is it that the Golden Lion is actually a mediocre teacher? Thinking back to when Shimotsuki Koshiro saw the moves Karen used in Shimotsuki village in the East China Sea, he directly advised him to give up kendo. But in the battle with Katakuri, although it was a bit difficult to learn, in the end, he perfectly learned the ability to predict colors. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly. He always felt that he was one step away from Conqueror's entanglement. Soon, he reacted and said coldly, even if I can't learn Conquerors, you can't beat me. You guess your physical strength is very serious now. HMPH, arrogant brat, the golden lion snorted, and then he suddenly smiled slyly. Gia ha ha ha, kid, I can tell you a way to learn Conqueror's entanglement. It depends on whether you have the courage to use it. Karen was stunned. Was he going to give himself a masterclass? Although he wanted to ask very much in his heart, his expression was already cold and he stared at the golden lion. The golden lion didn't care and continued. If you want to learn a skill, the easiest thing is to imitate it, but the most important thing is to feel it. Karen's mind moved. Indeed, compared to Teacher Keto's direct education of Luffy with a stick, he had never faced the attack of a golden lion. To use an inappropriate metaphor, when faced with knowledge, Luffy accepted it honestly, but he resisted. The golden lion continued. He asked in confusion. How about it, do you have the courage to give up your defense and use your body to feel the power of entanglement? Karen looked at the golden lion with a slight twitch in his mouth. I believe you as a ghost. NND, are you taking me for a fool? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. So, the next second, Karen put away the Zhangfeng in his hand and spread his arms. Maybe, it really works. Chapter 207 Crisis Exposed. Advertisement. It's not that Karen was unfazed by the golden lion's attack, it's just that he knew his physical condition very well. The bonus of full-level life return and the phantom beast species Guhuo bird makes his physique no less than that of an adult giant. The golden lion was stunned for a while, and then he laughed wildly. Gia ha 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 ha, I take back what I just said, you are really smart. His laughter resounded throughout the world, with arrogance and appreciation. Karen looked at him coldly, put the life return and weapon colors into full operation, and with the miracle reappearance in his ears, his physical fitness reached its peak. The golden lion took a deep breath, and this time he held nothing back. The powerful Conqueror was operating to the extreme, enough to cover everything around him under his pressure. At this moment, he forgot his identity and only had Karen in his eyes. The moisture in the air was oppressed by his strong aura, and even the rain seemed to be stagnant in his aura. He raised his two knives high, pointing the blades directly at Karen, the focus and enthusiasm in his eyes bursting out like flames. Get a good feel for how Conquerors is used. Conquerors seemed to turn into a sharp sword in the air, piercing Karen's heart. Feeling the majesty, Karen's heart felt like a thorn in his back. Every muscle in his body tensed instantly, and all he could see was the bright light of the knife. Drink. Wave chop. The sword light gradually dilated in Karen's pupils, and his body gave a frantic warning, urging him to escape quickly. But Karen remained unmoved and allowed the sword light to break through his body. There was a loud boom, and Karen's body was hit by the golden lion's sword. Karen felt like he was hit by a speeding train. The huge force, accompanied by the sharp edge of the knife, severely tore Karen's body apart. He felt the severe pain in his bones, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, but at that moment, a strange heat surged in his heart. It turns out that this is the power of entanglement. His shirt was shattered by the huge impact, and his whole body was like a sail torn by the strong wind, teetering on the edge, but still unwilling to sink in the rough waves. Finally, the execution platform at Karen's feet began to collapse again. Losing his footing, Karen fell from the sky like a falling meteor. He began to stamp on the air crazily, trying to use moonwalk to stabilize his body, but all his efforts were in vain under the huge force. At this critical moment, Guhuo bird activated its automatic protection, and it turned into countless strands of black energy, tightly wrapping Karen's declining body. The huge wings suddenly spread out, and Karen barely stopped his falling body. Advertisement too bad. Karen gritted her teeth and took off. The golden lion looked at Karen's current appearance, and his heart was filled with waves. He had seen this familiar figure in the newspaper more than once, or in other words, the reason why he chose to leave the mountain early was because of the Black Crow. So you are the Black Crow? Without waiting for Karen's answer, he started laughing crazily. Gia ha ha ha, interesting, interesting, Marine's young and brightest star is actually the culprit of the invasion of Marijoya. This is so much fun. Then, he changed the subject and said cruelly. Tell me, what will happen if you tell Garp your identity? I'm really looking forward to seeing Garp's shocked expression. Karen took a deep breath, wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and said coldly. It's a pity that you don't have this chance. The golden lion dismissed it and said loudly. Really, I like your arrogance, let's wait and see. As he spoke, his figure began to slide rapidly, as if he was preparing to move the battlefield below. But soon, he was shocked to find that the rain that originally filled the sky turned into ice arrows. Under Karen's control, countless ice arrows were directed towards Jin. The lion's sliding body shot away. A sneer appeared at the corner of the golden lion's mouth, and he swung his swords rapidly, knocking down all the ice arrows in the sky. But soon those downed ice arrows solidified instantly and launched a new round of attacks on the golden lion. The speed and quantity of the ice arrows were so fast that the golden lion had to concentrate and was unable to think about its next move. The hidden front was spat out of the mouth by the bird. Karen grasped Zhang Feng tightly and took a deep breath. He understood that he only had one chance. If he was escaped by the golden lion, his identity as the Black Crow would be exposed to the world. Although he has been disappointed with Marine, he is not ready to flee the world yet. Shaking his head, Karen forced himself not to think about that. He began to recall every move the Golden Lion made using Conqueror's entanglement. In his mind, the movements and expressions of the Golden Lion gradually slowed down, playing over and over again in his mind. At the same time, streaks of Conqueror's domineering energy flowed on Zhang Feng's sword, and Zhang Feng also began to tremble violently. A thought suddenly appeared in Karen's mind. Zhang Feng was longing for it. Advertisement: he longs for the Conqueror's power. This is not entanglement, but absorption. He didn't have time to imagine what was going on, and unleashed his Conqueror's full power. The domineering aura continuously poured into Zhang Feng. The light on the Zhang Feng sword is getting brighter and brighter, like a red sun, dazzling. The Golden Lion felt this powerful force and was shocked. He sensed the approaching danger. At this moment, Karen suddenly swung his hidden edge, and a huge sword energy swept out, with unparalleled power, and slashed straight towards the Golden Lion. God avoids. Karen's roar echoed in the air. This blow contains all the power of Karen and Zhang Feng. The sword energy was like black and red lightning, piercing the sky, with unstoppable power, illuminating the entire world into a vast expanse of white. The Golden Lion watched helplessly as the sword light dilated in his pupils. He gave up resisting the ice arrow and allowed the ice arrow to pierce his body. This is so true. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and time seemed to return to the storm many years ago. How many times have I said this, Roger? Although we had a lot of grudges when we were young, let's forget about him. As long as you know the whereabouts of the world-destroying weapons and my troops, plus the perfect plan I spent many years constructing, I can rule the world in no time. Be my right arm, Roger. I'm not interested in world domination, Shiki. If pirates can't do what they want, what's the point? You mean to let me kill you now? Roger. The Golden Lion was in a trance for a while. Karen's appearance gradually overlapped with Roger's. The same moves and the same firm eyes made him feel a familiar pain. He started shouting crazily, Roger, Roger, Roger. At the same time, the last voice in his mind was gradually becoming clearer. It means to defeat all of you. God avoids. He was defeated by the same move again. Roger. Chapter 208. Wind, strong wind. Advertisement: the sky is low pressure, and the rain all over the sky is constantly washing people's hearts with a bone-chilling chill. The sky is bright and dark for a while, like an endless struggle. The clouds in the sky are constantly alternating, sometimes revealing a faint light, and then being swallowed up by thick dark clouds in an instant. The rain is like a ruthless blade, cutting the earth wantonly, wetting every inch of the land and everyone's mood. On the streets, pools of water formed, reflecting the gray sky and the hurried figures of pedestrians. The fleeing people lowered their heads and hurriedly shuttled through the rain. The raindrops fell on their shoulders, as if silently telling the helplessness and despair of the city. The trees on the roadside were swaying in the strong wind, and their branches and leaves were beaten by the rain and made a slight whine. The faces of the people at the sea were full of exhaustion and despair, as if their souls had been washed away in the rain, leaving only empty eyes. Rumble. With the last loud noise, they were horrified to find that the island that was originally hanging in the sky began to shake violently, as if it was about to fall down in the next second. The sky is falling. A pedestrian was half kneeling at the head of the harbor, staring at the sinking island, and let out a desperate whisper. The surrounding pedestrians stopped and stared blankly at the island that was about to collapse, the fear on their faces becoming more and more obvious. Come on. We have to get out of here. A voice came from the dead atmosphere, breaking the silence. It was a woman holding a child. Her face was covered with rainwater, and she hugged the baby tightly, as if this was the only way to protect him from the coming disaster. Run? Where to run? A marine soldier beat the ground feebly and said in despair. A radius of 10 kilometers is covered by islands. We have no way out. As if to confirm his despair, the first piece of gravel began to slowly slide down, followed by the second, third. As more and more gravel fell, a deafening roar came from the sky, and even larger rocks began to slide from the collapsed island, as if the doomsday was coming from the sky. A small boat was hit by a huge rock without warning, and instantly broke into pieces. The flying wood chips were intertwined with the seawater, as if sending a signal for the coming disaster. When the people around witnessed all this, there was a burst of indescribable fear in their hearts, and they all retreated, fearing that they would become the next victim in the next moment. The woman holding the baby's knees were weak and she knelt on the ground weakly, but the next second, she suddenly put the baby on the ground and used her weak body to build a temporary protective barrier for her child. Although fear came like a tide, the power of maternal love made her hesitate. People around her were shocked by her actions and stopped one after another to stare at the scene. But soon, they had no time to be shocked, because directly above them, an island in the sky was descending rapidly. Advertisement: there was no way to escape. People opened their eyes wide in fear and forgot to think. They could only watch the island as their pupils continued to dilate. Smoker followed closely the figure in dark green robes and kept running towards the top of Rog Town. He had been chasing him for 3 minutes, and even though he used all his strength, he still couldn't get any closer to him. Smoker still has no intention of giving up, because he knows that the end of this alley is a dead end. Hurry, we'll be close soon. He couldn't wait to find out who he was. Sure enough, As the figure in green robe slowed down, a high wall appeared in Smoker's sight, and the man in green robe stopped. Smoker felt excited as he could finally see clearly what this mysterious man looked like. "Who are you?" Smoker asked breathlessly as he slowed down his pace. The man in green robe made no move to turn around, as if he didn't understand that he had no way out. Smoker looked at him warily and slowly approached him. Until he was about 50 meters away from the man in green robe, he suddenly heard a chuckle. Then, in Smoker's shocked eyes, a gust of wind blew by, disrupting his vision. Smoke seems to have no advantage in the face of strong winds. When he opened his eyes again, the figure of the man in green robe suddenly disappeared at the end of the alley. Smoker felt panicked and looked at the empty alley in disbelief. "Sorry, I can't be caught by Marine." At this moment, a deep voice came from above Smoker's head. Smoker raised his head, and the mysterious man in green robe was suspended in the air, flying high into the sky. "Piao fruit? Golden lion?" Before he could react, a strong wind swept over him. Before Smoker had time to think more, a powerful storm swept through. A storm is like a disaster, involving everything around it. Advertisement. Karen stood on the crumbling island in the sky, with the strong wind blowing across his face. Next to him, the golden lion lay on the ground, dying, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Move the island." Karen held up the golden lion's collar and stared at him coldly. "Jia. Ha ha. Ha ha." Although the golden lion has been defeated, he is still smiling. His laughter was mocking and sarcastic, as if he was laughing at Karen's stupidity and naivety. The golden lion's laughter echoed in the wind, making people's hair stand on end. There was a crazy expression on his face, as if he was enjoying the pleasure of this moment. "You lunatic!" Karen shouted angrily, and the strength in his hand increased a bit, making the golden lion feel more pressure. But the golden lion just laughed harder, as if he didn't care about life or death at all. "Didn't you stop me many times in Malinfan? Why don't use the same method?" After knowing Karen's identity, the golden lion understood that Malinfondo was by no means what the outside world knew. He knew that Karen would never let him go, and at the same time, he was very happy to see Marine's rising star fall into the arms of the pirates. There is no Kuzan here. Once Karen uses the power of ice, the 5 elders in Marijoya will definitely doubt Karen's identity. Damn it! Karen wanted to threaten again, but found that the golden lion had closed its eyes and was not breathing. Boom! The island shook violently. Karen clenched her fists, and the power of the bird instantly wrapped around her body. Even if he was exposed, he couldn't accept that so many innocent people were implicated. An extremely cold force began to gather around him. The rain all over the sky started to freeze. At the moment when the hidden edge in his hand was about to be slashed out, the wind howled. "Leave it to me, Karen." Chapter 209 Dorag. Advertisement. The wind whistled and the water surface rolled like boiling hot water, boiling endlessly. Huge waves hit the rocks one after another violently. The strong wind roared past, blowing away the haze above people's heads. What's going on? At the port of Rog Town, Marine soldiers stared blankly at the islands in the sky that were carried by the strong wind and floated farther and farther away. His mouth was so big that it looked like he could swallow an ostrich egg. What a strong wind! "We are saved, great, we are saved." More and more people reacted, looking at the sky excitedly. The woman holding her child in front of her also stood up. She almost burst into tears, rain mixed with tears sliding down her cheeks. "Baby, it's saved, it's saved." In the crowd, the Marine soldiers finally reacted, and they roared excitedly, their voices becoming particularly loud in the strong wind. "Quickly, let those who go to sea return to Rog Town." "Where's Lieutenant Colonel Smoker?" Karen stood there, using the hidden edge to hold his body that was about to collapse due to the force. He did not ask why Dolag appeared here, but silently watched Dolag's every move. The sweat on Dorag's face fell like rain. He gritted his teeth and breathed quickly and heavily. It was obvious that controlling this wind was not easy for him. It lasted for 10 minutes, and under his control, all the islands in the sky were far away from the waters of Rog Town. "Just here," Dorag whispered, as if speaking to himself, and as if seeking Karen's opinion. Karen walked to the edge of the island, leaned down and looked down. Looking in the direction of Rog Town from this place, only a vague outline can be seen, while on the other side, it is almost to the edge of the Red Earth continent. Advertisement. The islands in the sky began to slowly fall downwards, like slowly falling feathers, landing softly on the sea. As the island sank, Dolag's tense body gradually relaxed. With a loud bang, these islands completely lost their support and sank into the sea instantly, causing a huge wave. The splashing water was like the roar of a giant beast. "See you again, Karen." Dolag lifted the hood of his dark green cloak, revealing a cheek without eyebrows. "We meet again," Karen said calmly. His attitude was lukewarm, and he had no wavering about the reunion before him. Dorag was smiling, not dissatisfied at all with Karen's attitude towards him. "When I first met him, he was just an ordinary person whose hometown was massacred by pirates and wanted help. But now he has become a person who can influence the world. Especially when Karen himself is the Black Crow, his heart is by no means as calm as he appears on the surface. A young man who he saved it will actually caused such a big wave in this world. Thank you for helping me again. Karen seemed to feel that his attitude was a bit cold, he added. Dolog saved him once and helped him twice, but now their identities made him not sure how to deal with him. He knew his identity as the Black Crow, but it was impossible for Karen to take action against his benefactor. Dolog said seriously, "No need to thank me, I should thank you." "Thank me?" Karen was confused. Dorag's voice was deep and firm. He bowed slightly to Karen and said, "Yes, thank you for saving those slaves in Marijoya." Seeing him acting like this, Karen felt a little embarrassed. He did not invade Malinfondo to rescue the slaves, but just to vent his inner emotions. "I wasn't thinking too much about it, I just wanted to find a way to release my anger." Karen frowned slightly, with a hint of helplessness in his tone. Dorag's gaze became more determined, as if he was seeing something deeper through Karen's surface. "Advertisement, whatever your original intentions, the results are commendable and you have brought hope to those innocent lives, which is exactly what our time needs. How about it? You should have understood in the past few years in Marine that Marine is not a suitable place for you. Do you want to join us?" After 3 years, Dolog once again extended his invitation to Karen. "As long as you join, we can change the world together. I can directly hand over the position of Chief of Staff of the Revolutionary Army to you, and you can fully display your talents on this sea." Dorag's voice was full of enthusiasm and expectation, and his eyes were like a burning flame, looking directly at Karen. For this young man whom he was optimistic about 3 years ago, now he hopes Karen can help him even more. The road to revolution is tiring, and Dorag urgently needs a partner who can shoulder the heavy responsibility. You should know that you can't hide your identity for too long. Dorag looked at Karen with firm eyes. "I know you have your own persistence and ideals, but if you continue like this, your identity will be discovered sooner or later. Once they discover your identity, they will never let you go. Our Revolutionary Army can provide you with protection and support, allowing you to achieve your goals more safely." Karen couldn't help but feel moved after hearing Dorag's words. He knew that Dorag was right, and if he continued to fight alone, he would probably get into trouble. However, joining the Revolutionary Army meant that he had to give up some personal freedom and independence, which was not an easy thing for him. Dorag saw Karen's hesitation. He patted Karen on the shoulder and said sincerely, "Karen, I understand your concerns, but please believe me, the Revolutionary Army is not an organization that binds you, but a platform to help you grow. Here, you will have more opportunities to come into contact with different people and things, and learn more knowledge and skills. At the same time, you will also make many like-minded friends and work hard to achieve our goals." Quote. Karen did not refuse immediately this time, but lowered his head and began to think. It is true that Dorag was right. If it were not for him this time, he would definitely use the same method to freeze the islands in the sky with seawater. This time there is no Kuzan to cover for him, and his identity will definitely be exposed to the 5 elders. And Dorag is undoubtedly a very charming person. Anyone who dares to resist the status quo is fighting for his or her beliefs. They stood up bravely and challenged oppression and injustice. Although the road ahead was difficult and dangerous, they still chose to pursue freedom and justice. Such courage deserves to be remembered and admired by everyone. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Dorag is exactly such a brave fighter. He is not only a leader, but also a symbol of countless souls pursuing freedom. Chapter 210 Fluttering Fruit. Advertisement. However, this does not mean that Karen is suitable for the Revolutionary Army, because he understands that as a rebel, what the Revolutionary Army needs most is tolerance. This is also the reason why Dorag is ridiculed as the king of forbearance. Unfortunately, for this world, the Revolutionary Army is just a backdrop. Dolag's revolution is not the same thing as the revolution he thinks. Even if he joins the Revolutionary Army, it will not have any impact on the world. "I refuse." Karen raised his head and rejected Dorag's invitation for the second time. Dorag sighed slightly, but there was not too much disappointment on his face, as if he already knew Karen's answer. "Okay, Karen, I still say the same thing. As long as you want it, the door of the Revolutionary Army will be open for you." Karen nodded seriously with a serious look on his face. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and said, "Mr. Dorag, although I can't join you, I am willing to provide you with some ideas." When Dorag heard this, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes, and he asked eagerly, "What do you think?" Karen shook his head mysteriously and said slowly, "Now is not the time to talk. After I have properly handled the matters at hand, I will definitely visit you personally." "Okay. This is my life card." Unexpectedly, Dolog took out a piece of pure white paper from his arms and handed it to Karen without hesitation. Karen stared blankly at the life card in Dorag's hand, feeling an indescribable feeling in his heart. Because as long as he controls the life card, it means that he can find Dorag's location anytime and anywhere. For the Revolutionary Army who needs to hide, this is undoubtedly a kind of trust in him. "This is really treating me as one of your own." Karen couldn't help but sigh softly in her heart, stretched out her hand and carefully took the life card. "I have to go, it will be troublesome if I get entangled with that guy." Seeing Karen accept his lifecard, Dolag smiled slightly, and then a breeze blew by, and Dolag's figure disappeared without a trace in an instant. Looking at the direction where Dolag left, Karen murmured to himself, "What a mysterious man." After Dorag left, Karen walked step by step towards the direction where the golden lion fell. The golden lion's expression was peaceful, ignoring the sword wounds on his body and the missing legs. He seemed to be asleep. He did not die like One Piece Roger. The short words before his death became the opening ceremony of the Great Pirate Era. Advertisement like Roger, he died in the East China Sea, which he despised most, in Roger Town. Karen bent down, placed the fire rat on the ground, and then stuffed the dead wood and Yingshi, two famous knives in the golden lion's hand, into its mouth. This is his trophy, and he wants to prepare for the next step of cultivating his own power. After giving a piece of dried meat to the fire rat, it jumped back into Karen's pocket. Karen stared at the golden lion's body quietly, and finally carried it behind him. In any case, the golden lion had indirectly helped him, and it was with his help that Karen was able to understand Conqueror's domineering entanglement technique. At this moment, all he could do was to find a suitable cemetery for the golden lion and bury him properly. After carrying the body of the golden lion for only a few steps, Karen was surprised to find countless wood chips floating in the sky. These sawdust fell down one after another, like a strange rain of sawdust. This is the remains of the execution platform? Karen narrowed his eyes and quickly figured out where the sawdust came from. Taking another 2 steps forward, he suddenly raised his head and stared at the small black shadow in the sky. The black shadow continued to enlarge in his pupils, becoming increasingly clear. Karen reached out and took it. It was a fruit similar to the shape of a pineapple. What was different from ordinary fruits was that its peel was covered with spiral patterns. Devil fruit. Karen only felt his heart beating wildly. He remembered that this fruit was brought by him. He and Garp brought it to the golden lion to eat. It turned into a devil fruit. According to common sense, the birth of a devil fruit means the death of a person with abilities. And now, the golden lion has passed away, so this fruit is very likely to be his Piao Piao fruit. It was reborn so close, almost right next to the golden lion. Karen felt ecstatic in her heart. The value of this fruit was no less than that of Logia and the phantom beast species. In the eyes of outsiders, Karen has eaten the fruit, but only he knows that he has never really tasted the devil fruit. This means that it is entirely possible for him to swallow this mysterious fruit and obtain the coveted ability to fly. Who doesn't want to have the power to soar into the sky? Advertisement him. Well, maybe I already have that ability. Karen was teasing himself secretly in his heart, but this did not diminish his inner excitement at all. Compared with the powerful abilities given to the user by the devil fruit, the fear of seawater is simply insignificant. The only thing that bothered him was Hailushi. As a non-devil fruit user, he didn't know how much restraint Hailushi had on people with abilities. After some thinking, he gradually calmed down. Even without the devil fruit, he was confident enough to face any challenge. If it were before, I would definitely eat it without hesitation. Now, even if he doesn't rely on devil fruit, he still firmly believes that he can be fearless of anyone. To put it simply, although he didn't eat the devil fruit, he was still floating. After all, he had even learned the most powerful Conqueror's entanglement in the sea. Eating the Piao Piao fruit now can only be the icing on the cake, and it will also add a weakness to yourself. After hesitating for a moment, he put the devil fruit into his coat pocket and walked again with the body of the golden lion on his back. Just right here. Karen found a hidden valley, surrounded by towering trees and gurgling streams, as if it was the resting place prepared by nature for the golden lion. Just as he was about to dig the soil, an angry voice came from the air. Shiki. The loud voice echoed throughout the valley. It wasn't Garp or someone else. By the time you find the golden lion, I'm already so cold. Karen helplessly held his forehead and complained secretly in his heart, but he also knew that this was really not Garp's problem. The ability of the Piao Piao fruit was really buggy. No wonder the golden lion could only appear in the theatrical version. I'm here. Karen stopped digging and revealed her conqueror's aura. Soon, Garp's figure came into Karen's sight. He was tall and powerful, the muscles on his face were tense, his brows were furrowed, and his eyes were flashing with angry flames, as if they were about to explode in an instant. Great, you're okay. The moment he saw Karen, his anger seemed to have softened a bit, but he still clenched his fists. Why are you the only one, she? He didn't finish his words because he had already seen the body of the golden lion. What's going on? Chapter 211 North Blue, Don Quixote. Advertisement. What's going on? Smoker looked at the sky blankly. At this time, the sky returned to its previous blue color and the sun was shining brightly, as if everything that just happened was a dream. But the wailing sounds around him and the remains of houses shattered by rubble reminded him that everything just now was true. Bulu bulu bulu. The phone rang, breaking Smoker's thoughts. Lieutenant Colonel, where are you? As soon as the call was connected, a quick voice sounded on the other end of the phone. What's the situation now? Are there any casualties? Smoker asked in a deep voice. Report, Lieutenant Colonel. The phone bug's voice sounded particularly harsh in the chaotic background. I am now at the port of Rog Town. Currently, at least 50 people are injured. We are organizing rescue, but the situation is very urgent. Smoker felt slightly relieved. This result was much less casualties than Malinfondo. Continue to collect statistics and search and rescue. I will go now. Is that brat Dolog here too? In the valley, Garp was gearing up and looking around. He's gone. Karen reminded that he did not conceal the whereabouts of Dolog, otherwise he would not be able to explain how those islands in the sky came here. You brat, you run so fast, Garp grunted dissatisfiedly, and then turned his attention to the body of the golden lion. You did this? Karen hesitated for a moment, then nodded and responded, yes. There is nothing to hide. Good boy, I really underestimated you. I didn't expect that even the golden lion was no match for you. Garp secretly smacked his lips. Karen's growth rate was beyond his imagination. Then, he lowered his head and murmured, Shiki, Shiki, I didn't expect that you would die in Donghai, the place you despise the most. Karen said calmly, I'm going to bury him here. He didn't understand if this talisman was in compliance with the rules, but neither he nor Garp were rule-abiding people. Advertisement sure enough, just as he imagined, Garp did not raise any objection. He just nodded slowly and personally helped the golden lion dig the grave. After burying the golden lion, Karen and Garp stood side by side and prepared to leave. Neither of them was in the mood to talk. As soon as they walked out of the valley, a lewd voice came from the air. Oops, it seems I'm late. The golden lion has been taken care of by you? Karen glanced at him lightly. He knew that Perusalino had already arrived in this valley long after Garp arrived. I just don't understand the reason why he didn't follow Garp into the valley. No, Karen solved it alone. Garp interfaced. What a scary young man. I'm probably no longer your match now. Perusalino fell lightly from the air and stopped in front of the two of them, with a hint of amusement in his expression. Then he took out his phone and briefly reported the situation here to the headquarters. Warring states said that they would send people to verify the situation, and they would also send marines from surrounding towns to carry out subsequent construction and rescue for Rog Town. Garp nodded and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, in that case, let's prepare for the banquet. But in the end, the banquet was not held because although the casualties in Rog Town were not large, the current situation was obviously not suitable for celebration. But Garp was also very excited, because during this month, he would throw a huge beast to Karen almost every day. Hiccup, Garp burped, then put on his shirt from the side. This is his habit of eating food made by Karen. After all, eating food made by Karen will make your clothes burst. He casually took out a toothpick and said while picking his teeth, How about Uda? She is with teacher Zepha. I heard that she has become the hero of Malinfondo? Yes, she ate the devil fruit, and that power was just enough to restrain the mad beast. Garp laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, I thought the next hero would be you, but I didn't expect that she would beat me to it. Karen shook his head helplessly. I don't want to be a hero either. Who isn't? Garp didn't know what he was thinking of, his eyes darkened. After a full 2 minutes, Garp spoke again. Are you anxious to go back this time? Karen nodded, shook his head, and asked, What's wrong? Advertisement, Garp asked. It's hard to come to the East China Sea, why don't you go back? Seeing that Karen didn't respond, Garp continued. When you go back this time, you will go to the New World. By then, it will be difficult for you to have time to come back. Although Karen is still a major general so far, many Marines understand that Karen's strength has truly surpassed that of a lieutenant general. The upper management asked Karen to go to New World to restrict the development of pirates. It was not a secret to the upper management. Okay, let me go back. Karen's eyes flashed. He went back this time not just to visit the villagers of Windmill Village. The most important thing is that he has already planned to establish his own power. There is no strong person in Donghai that is worth absorbing, but there are many strong people with potential here. Such as Ace, Saab, Kuina. This time he planned to pack them up and take them away to prepare for his next plan. North Blue, Rosewood Island. The sky was gloomy and depressing, covered with dark clouds, and the air was filled with the salty and humid smell of seawater, making people feel an indescribable depression. It is located on the shores of North Blue, surrounded by azure waters and white sandy beaches. The island is lined with green trees, flowers are in bloom, and various exotic plants and animals live and thrive here. In the center of this island, there is a town. Despite the gloomy sky, the residents of the town were busy and cheerful. On both sides of the street, vendors shouted at their stalls, selling fresh seafood, tropical fruits and handicrafts. But soon, there was the sound of artillery. The whole town became silent, as if time had frozen at this moment. The shouts of the vendors stopped suddenly, and the tourists looked at each other and looked around in horror. People's eyes invariably focused on the east side of the town, and the roar came from that direction. A group of men in black suits walked out of the shadows, with steady steps and ferocious and crazy smiles on their faces. Thump! A tourist suddenly collapsed on the ground, covering his face with his hands, looking extremely panicked. A man next to him reached out to hold him and asked with great concern, "What's wrong with you?" The tourist slumped on the ground, with a look of fear on his face, his voice trembling, exclaimed. They are the Don Quixote family, chapter 212. This is Karen. Advertisement, report to my young master, the flag of our Don Quixote family has been planted on Rosewood Island. A low and cruel voice came from the phone, and beneath his voice the roar of artillery fire and distant screams could be heard faintly. A satisfied smile appeared on Doflamingo's face, and a twisted light flashed in his eyes. Bah! Very good, Gladius, I want everyone to understand the prestige of the Don Quixote family. Gaba! With a crisp sound, the phone was hung up mercilessly, and Doflamingo dropped it on the table. The joking smile that originally hung on the corner of his mouth also disappeared without a trace in an instant. Because just above this table, there is a newspaper. On the newspaper page, a young marine could clearly be seen holding a long sword as black as ink, with a heroic appearance. In front of him, kneeling was a pirate with blonde hair. The title clearly reads, Marine's New Hero, Charon defeated the legendary pirate Golden Lion. This is not the first time Doflamingo has seen Charon's photo in the newspaper, but there is no doubt that this time it shocked him like never before. After all, the man kneeling on the ground is the famous legendary pirate Golden Lion. How could he lose to Charon so easily? Doflamingo couldn't believe it. When he carefully recalled Charon's growth process, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He clearly remembered that Charon gradually emerged from an unknown role and climbed to the top step by step. It can be said that he witnessed the rise of Charon with his own eyes. Thinking back on the things he had done, he understood that Charon would not let him go. Now, Charon's image seems to be an extremely sharp sword hanging above his head, threatening his life at all times. His left hand kept tapping rhythmically on the table, his brows furrowed. Soon, his frown gradually relaxed, and a confident smile reappeared on his face. He is a descendant of God, how could he be afraid? Advertisement Since he can't restrain Charon's revenge, he can find someone who can restrain Charon. Bah, bah, bah. Torre, help me contact the world government. Torble on the side respectfully handed a phone bug to Doflamingo. At this moment, a crisp slap came from the door. A child covered his cheek in pain, his eyes full of fear, staring at the demonic blonde man in front of him. Hey. I say, Corazon still hates children so much. Torble dragged the iron shackles on his ankles and slowly approached Rosinante, staring at the child who was knocked to the ground with interest. Rosinante moved slightly, keeping some distance from him without leaving any trace. Torble asked curiously, Hey, kid, how did you offend our Mr. Corazon? The child covered his cheek tightly, climbed up from the ground with difficulty, and replied with a trembling voice. I didn't. He rushed over suddenly, and I didn't have time to dodge, so I was accidentally knocked down by him. Rosinante silently took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, took a deep breath, and then slowly walked towards the child. When he walked in front of the child, he squatted down, a smile appeared on his face at first, but then, he clenched his right fist and swung it out violently, knocking the child to the ground again who had just stood up from the ground. Heh. How cruel, Mr. Corazon. Torble smiled even more happily when he saw this scene. Bullying the weak and the like were simply in line with his fun. The child was lying on the ground, covering his face in pain, with tears pouring out and sliding down his face. Why do you do this to me? I just want to join you. The little boy asked, choked with sobs, his eyes full of helplessness and confusion. Rocinante still didn't speak, just stared at him, as if ready to beat him again at any time. Because you are too weak. Weak things should be bullied by strong people. Torble said without mercy, with a hint of sarcasm in his tone. The little boy seemed unable to understand. However, with the burst of hunger in his stomach, he had to face reality. He lowered his head and begged in a weak voice. I will become very strong when I grow up. Let me join the Don Quixote family. Torble looked at Rosinante, wanting to see how Mr. Corazon would respond. Rosinante was still watching everything that happened in front of him expressionlessly. A sarcastic smile appeared on Torble's lips. Hey, of course, let's do this, you go and kill. Bang! Advertisement Before he could finish his words, Rosinante suddenly rushed forward and kicked the little boy to the ground. The little boy fell heavily to the ground, let out a scream, and then lay straight on the ground without any movement. Seeing this, Torble shrugged and said with regret. What a pity, it seems that our Mr. Corazon really hates you. Seeing that there was no fun to play, he felt bored and turned around to leave. No one noticed the painful expression flashing in Rosinante's eyes, but soon, the pain turned into a ferocious smile, and his eyes became cold and cruel. He turned around, looking for his next target like a ferocious beast. Rosewood Island. An old man hugged a little girl and ran under gunfire. Surrounded by a battlefield filled with thick smoke, the roar of artillery shells was deafening, and the ground was full of wreckage and broken buildings. The old man's face was covered with scars, and his expression was serious and terrifying. He wrapped his arms tightly around the little girl, trying to make her feel safe, her green hair flying in the air, her eyes flashing with uneasiness and fear. Quick, follow me, the man roared in a low voice, and then he realized that there was an older little girl following behind him. The little girl's face was also full of fear and anxiety. She had the same green hair as the little girl in the old man's arms, but her hair was longer than the smaller girl's and slightly curly. Where are we going to run to? The curly-haired girl followed closely behind the old man and asked nervously. Find a safe place first. The old man replied breathlessly, while his eyes continued to scan through the thick smoke, trying to find a path that could lead them to escape from the battlefield. I think those who attacked Rosewood Island are not bad people. Maybe we can seek shelter from them. After all, without their help, we might be in hell now. The curly-haired girl's voice trembled slightly, and there was a hint of innocence in her eyes. The old man suddenly stopped, held her hand tightly, and said seriously, No, listen to me, Monet, we can't take risks easily. After speaking, he hesitated for a moment, then carefully took out a phone bug from his arms and dialed the number. After a while, a calm young man's voice came from the phone. This is Karen. Chapter 213 Germa Advertisement. Flying really has unique advantages over this sea. While others were still worrying about how to enter the Grand Route from the East China Sea, Karen had already flown across the Red Continent on the Guhuo bird and arrived at the North Blue Sea. At this time, Karen was sitting on Jiyu Huoniao's broad back, blowing the breeze. Ever since Zhang Feng absorbed Karen's Conqueror's Haki, Jiyu Huoniao's appearance has changed a lot. The first is its size. It is getting bigger and bigger, and its wings are as big as a warship. Its feathers have also become darker, and there is no reflection at all under the sunlight. It seems to absorb all the surrounding light and transform into the most mysterious black shadow in the world. And its eyes, just one look at them can make you feel cold all over your body. Its temperament is like a king in the night, which makes people dare not approach. Karen once saw with her own eyes that after a newsbird delivered a newspaper to Karen, he just glanced at the bird and was so frightened that even Bailey didn't dare to ask for it and hurriedly flew into the air. It's like it has acquired the characteristics of Karen's gourmet, and has a natural suppression on the creatures in the air. I heard that North Blue is the strongest sea in the 4 seas. Smoker also sat on the back of Guhuo bird. After he saw the strength of the golden lion, he decided to become Karen's adjutant and escape from Rog Town. He is a student of the same class as Karen, and is also one of Karen's few friends. There is nothing embarrassing about following Karen now. He has been firmly bound to Karen. From then on, both of them will suffer and prosper. Karen responded, Yes, several of our Marine Lieutenant Generals are from the North Blue. 2 of the 3 substitute generals are from the North Blue. Even our staff are also from the North Blue. It turns out that Staff Officer Crane is from North Blue. Smoker seemed to know this news for the first time. He paid little attention to other things during the training camp except training and causing trouble. Karen nodded, glanced at Mansili, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, and continued. Well, there is also Norlando, he is also from North Blue. Norlando? The big liar Norlando? To Karen's surprise, Smoker had heard of Norlando's name. Yes, but he's not a liar. Karen pointed to Mancheli and explained. His adventures are all true. In other words, Golden Land? Smoker almost jumped off Jiyu Huoniao's back. Even if he was slow, he knew what the Golden Land represented. Yes, it is also real. Advertisement. Karen nodded again in affirmation. Smoker asked. Do you know the location of the Golden Country? No. So this trip to North Blue is for the Golden Country? No, I just went to pick up a few people and handle some personal matters. Having said this, Smoker clearly felt a murderous intention spreading from Karen's body. This was not the first time he saw Karen burst into murderous intent. When he was a student, he had personally seen Karen killing pirates in the waters of the Sabodi Islands. Now, he felt the same breath again. He knew that Karen usually looked smiling and friendly, but when he was angry, he seemed to be a different person. Smoker couldn't help but take out a cigar from his arms and was about to light it, but was stopped by Karen. This is not a good place to smoke. Karen pointed at the back of the bird, and Smoker realized that he was on top of the big bird. Smoker looked embarrassed, then he seemed to have discovered something and quickly changed the topic. Look, there seems to be an island ahead. Karen followed his guidance, and sure enough, the outline of an island vaguely appeared in front of it, and it looked quite small in size. No, that's not an island. Smoker observed while saying. It looks like a country made up of one ship, and those ships look weird, they look like a phone bug, snailboat, right? Karen took over. He had already seen a flag with 66 written on a black background and white letters hanging in the center of the island. He knew that this was the Kingdom of Germa, the only name in the world for a maritime country without a fixed territory. Usually dozens of ships move separately, and they merge together to form a kingdom. The apex of national and military rule was the Vinsmoke family. This is the family of Sanji, the chef of the Straw Hat Pirates in the original work. The ruler of the Germa kingdom is Vinsmoke Kaji. He once worked with Vegapunk at the Mads Research Institute. Later, Vegapunk was arrested by the world government and then joined the Marine Science Force, while Vinsmoke Kaji escaped. It's really magical. I didn't expect there to be such a magical country on this sea. Advertisement. Smoker clicked his tongue. They're a member of the world government. Karen withdrew his gaze and had no interest in the Germa palace. Although Vinsmoke Kaji mastered blood factor technology and cloning technology, this was nothing to Karen, who had already gained the friendship of Vegapunk. What a shame. After hearing that it was a franchise country, Smoker also withdrew his gaze. If it was a pirate, he would be very interested. He can't wait to show his strength to the world. Karen hesitated for a while. Although he received Roderick's request for help, he was not familiar with the environment of North Blue and had no clue about the beautiful island Roderick mentioned. As the most notorious organization in North Blue, the Kingdom of Germa, and the most influential organization in North Blue, must be very familiar with the various islands of North Blue. Without any further hesitation, Karen gently stroked the bird's feathers and told it her thoughts. The bird immediately galloped away in the direction of the Germa Kingdom. "Are you ready to land on the island?" Smoker asked. Karen nodded. "Well, go down and ask for directions." In less than a minute, the bird was already hovering above the Germa Kingdom. Karen did not hide his aura. He did not intend to waste any more time here. He just wanted to find out the route to Rosewood Island and then leave. Enemy attack. A harsh sound pierced the sky, and Germa's alarm system began to work, with red alarms flashing on the island's towers. Soon, all the cannons were aimed at the bird in the sky. Karen grabbed Smoker and jumped off the bird, stepping on the moonwalk. Karen landed firmly, and the bird became the size of a sparrow and landed on Karen's shoulder. Da da da, neat footsteps formed a circle surrounding Karen. They were uniformly dressed in dark blue combat uniforms, marching in unison without the slightest error, and their movements were smooth and rapid, without any delay. Damn, what's going on with these guys? Smoker cursed secretly, because he found that not only did the movements of these soldiers perfectly match those of his companions, but their faces also looked exactly the same. It's like being copied from the same mold. Without any unnecessary questions, they pulled the trigger in unison. Chapter 214 The Glory of Vinsmoke. Advertisement. North Blue people are so rude. Smoker grunted while looking at the bloodstains, with a slight dissatisfaction on his face. Because he had eaten the logia fruit, he didn't care about the threat of these bullets. Across the world, logia is so terrifying. Karen is naturally not afraid, but the manchili he is carrying is not necessarily so. In order to prevent the flying stray bullets from accidentally injuring Manchili, Karen narrowed her eyes slightly. Boom! Conquerors spread from his body, knocking out the clone soldiers in front of him in the blink of an eye. This is the result of Karen deliberately controlling his domineering power. Otherwise it will not only stun the soldiers, but the entire Germa kingdom may fall into a deep sleep because of his domineering power. Now he can control his conquerors accurately. Don't worry about hurting your own people. Moreover, his conqueror's strength is of terrifyingly high quality after he learns to wrap around it. He was confident that even if he met Whitebeard, he could still touch him. You may not win, but you won't lose too badly either. What happened? At this time, Manchili, who was sleeping in Karen's arms, woke up. There was still a sparkling smile on the corner of her mouth. She looked like she had just woken up, looking both cute and innocent. Nothing. Karen's mouth twitched slightly, and she used her sleeve to wipe away Manchili's saliva in disgust. I heard that her tears can heal wounds, but I didn't know that her saliva. Karen shook his head, controlling himself not to think wildly. Are you there? Manchili rubbed her eyes, as if she had not yet fully recovered from her dream. The chaotic scene in front of her made her a little confused for a moment. No, I just came down to ask for directions. Okay, Karen. After being woken up, Manchili no longer had the desire to continue sleeping. She crawled along Karen's button to Karen's other shoulder. On the way up, she stepped on the fire rat, causing the fire rat to squirm. He stuck his head out and glanced at Karen. Seeing that nothing happened to him, he turned into a lighter again and returned to calmness. Ha ha ha. Advertisement somehow, Smoker burst out laughing looking at Karen. You have so many pets. You're the pet. After Manchili sat down, her legs swayed in the air and she looked at Smoker dissatisfied. Smoker wanted to say something more, but at this moment, he felt a cold gaze sweep over him. It's a bird. He felt like he was in a cold ice cellar, and the temperature around him dropped suddenly, making Smoker couldn't help but shiver. So he closed his mouth involuntarily. He had seen the strength of Guhunyao with his own eyes. If he really faced it, he might not be Guhunyao's opponent. And it was indeed him who got high just now. Karen glanced at Smoker and said seriously, "They're all my partners." Smoker lowered his head in shame, realizing that he had been a little rude. He actually didn't mean anything malicious, it was just a joke on a whim. Let's go, let's visit the owner of this island. Karen broke the awkward atmosphere, his voice was calm and gentle, as if what just happened had never happened. The palace of the kingdom of Germa, whoa whoa whoa. The extremely sad cries echoed in the gorgeous kingdom, like a tragic song, telling endless sorrow. Mother. A child with yellow hair knelt in front of the hospital bed, his vision blurred by tears. His voice was full of despair and grief, as if he wanted to vent all his emotions. Behind him, 4 small figures watched all this quietly, their eyes indifferent, as if they could not understand why the little boy with yellow hair was crying so bitterly. There was a hint of disdain and disgust in their expressions. They are born warriors of the Germa family. The warriors of Germa will not shed tears, will not be sad, and will not suffer. They were born with only one mission, to make the kingdom of Germa great again. Only one of the pink girls had a trace of doubt and perseverance in her eyes. Advertisement she tried to understand, but she still couldn't understand why the yellow-haired boy was so fragile. Vinsmoke Kaji is sitting in front of the hospital bed, staring ahead with a serious expression, making it difficult to guess his mood at the moment. His brows furrowed slightly, as if he was thinking about something important. Except for the cry of the little boy with yellow hair, there was no other sound in the whole room, and the atmosphere seemed extremely depressing. "Don't leave me, mother. I'll make you food. Please wake up. Please, don't leave, don't leave." The yellow-haired boy's voice trembled, and his hands held his mother's hand tightly, as if this could keep her. But no matter how he called, his mother didn't respond. She just lay quietly on the bed, like a sleeping angel. Time passed like this minute by minute, and after about 10 minutes, a rapid siren broke the peace. The 4 children who were originally standing next to the yellow-haired boy heard the siren, with excited and eager expressions on their faces, as if a fire was burning in their hearts, and they couldn't wait to rush downstairs to see what happened. They are eager to fight and to show their strength. But due to the additional treatment on the hospital bed, they could only suppress their inner impulses and wait for the right time. Silence, silence. Another long 10 minutes passed, and the siren still echoed throughout the room, showing no signs of weakening. Kaji closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then suddenly opened his eyes flashing with anger, cruelty, and a hint of sadness. He clenched his fists tightly and scanned the people around him with sharp eyes, exuding a chilling coercion. Everyone present did not avoid his gaze. They straightened their spines and did not flinch. Because they are members of the Germa family, they will not be afraid of anyone. Even though the man in front of them is their father and the ruler of this kingdom. At this time, a soldier took a step forward, saluted respectfully, and then said slowly, "There has been no news of an arrest of the intruder." Hearing this, Kaji raised the corners of his mouth slightly, showing a cold smile, and said, "Very good." He suppressed his inner emotions, turned around, took a deep look at his wife on the bed, and then turned around and left without any hesitation. "I'm going to make these invaders pay. Let them understand how terrible Germa really is." Chapter 215 Germa's Rules Advertisement. What's going on with these guys? Smoker followed Karen, looking puzzled. When he and Karen boarded the kingdom of Germa, a steady stream of soldiers opened fire on them. Even if these people look the same, the key is that no matter how he communicates, these people have no reaction. Boom. Another group of soldiers discovered Karen's whereabouts, and without hesitation, they drew their guns and shot. It is not known which wave of soldiers Karen has stunned. Karen is also helpless. He just wants to ask for directions. If this continues, he will destroy the Germa kingdom. They are all clones and will only execute orders according to the program. Karen said calmly, "Oh, that's interesting. Is this North Blue? It's really amazing." Smoker was secretly surprised that he had just followed Karen and met something beyond his knowledge even before he arrived in the new world, which made him feel that he was indeed following the wrong person. It's not okay to continue like this. After all, Germa is a member country. I'm afraid it won't be good for us to wreak havoc like this. He felt that he had been thorny enough during his time in the military academy, but Karen was challenging a kingdom as soon as he took action, and it was just to ask for directions. Ahem, looking for. Karen coughed dryly and felt a little regretful. If he had known that the road conditions in the Germa kingdom were so complicated, he would have landed directly on the largest snail boat. It's just that he felt it would be impolite to go directly to someone else's palace, so he deliberately found a slightly peripheral area. Unexpectedly, these soldiers attacked his group without even asking. "How about I go to the front and ask?" Smoker suggested. Under normal circumstances, Marines cannot easily enter the territory of the participating countries. They usually have their own armies. Only when they encounter problems that they cannot solve, they will apply to the world government and ask Marines or CPs to come to help. He didn't want to cause such a big trouble just after following Karen. "I know you're in a hurry, but don't worry yet." Karen stabilized Smoker. He had already taken action anyway, and he didn't do anything to the soldiers. He just made them temporarily comatose. He felt that the strange bird wouldn't be angry. After all, he was once a scientist. After walking for another 2 minutes, he climbed over a snail boat. Karen's eyes lit up and he finally arrived at the square of the kingdom of Germa. Advertisement. The place was full of people at this time. They all looked serious and exuded a cold aura. They lowered their heads and seemed to be in silence. Karen disturbed them as soon as she appeared. They turned their heads neatly, staring at Karen and Smoker with burning eyes. That kind of gaze was very cold, as if there was no human emotion left. But this time, they did not rush to take action. The leader, a tall man with a stern face, stepped forward and said coldly, "You are the intruders." His voice had no tone at all, as if it was squeezed out of cold metal. "Hey, look clearly, we are not intruders, we are Marines." Seeing that there was finally a human being who could communicate, Smoker immediately stood up and expressed his identity. "Marine?" The burly man glanced Smoker up and down, as if examining an object. Then, he said coldly, "Why is Marine here? We did not accept Marine's request to visit. We have no ill intentions, we just want to ask for directions to your country." Smoker explained. "It was our first time coming to North Blue and we didn't understand the road conditions here. No matter what the reason is, no one can trespass into our country on this land. This is the rule of our kingdom of Germa." As he spoke, he didn't give Smoker a chance to continue talking. He instantly took out a very technological-looking weapon from his arms. Following his movements, the clone legions standing behind him all raised the same weapons as his, and aimed tens of thousands of guns at Karen. As before, there was no hesitation. Bang bang bang. The gunfire suddenly rang out, the deafening sound echoed in the air, fiery snakes spurted out from the muzzle, and the air was filled with anxious breath. MD, you talk so much and still do it, why are you beeping so much for me? Smoker couldn't help but cursed angrily, and the smoke instantly turned into smoke, and the fire snake shuttled through his body in an instant. Karen used the armed color to protect Mansili in front of him, making a clanking sound from his body. Even Karen was a little angry after being teased like this. Wasn't this a trick on them? So he opened Conquerors a little more this time. Advertisement boom. The terrifying Conqueror's aura surged like a tide, instantly sweeping through all the clones in the square. Those originally cold and ruthless faces showed a trace of fear at this moment, and then fell down one after another. The stone bricks at Karen's feet were also affected by the terrifying Conquerors, with Karen as the center, spreading out in all directions like a spider web. It seemed that even the sky was turbulent for a moment, and the whole weather became a little darker. Conquerors is really easy to use, but Wang Lufei doesn't seem to use it very much. Is he leaving it to his younger brothers to improve their scores? Karen secretly complained in his heart that he didn't want to take action if he could use Conquerors to solve it. Just whichever stop he goes to is full of energy, and there is no need for him to do it himself. Smoker looked at Karen enviously. Conquerors, he also wants. Of course, he was just thinking about it, as he knew how rare Conquerors were. The burly man standing in front of the team was also frightened by this force. Although he was not afraid, he was still shocked. Conquerors? The burly man said slowly. Karen raised an eyebrow, not expecting anyone in North Blue to recognize Ba Chi. You know, people living in the East China Sea don't even know what devil fruits are. Have you seen it? I've seen you, right here in North Blue. The burly man said stiffly. Karen asked curiously, oh, who is it? Don Quixote Doflamingo. There seemed to be a problem with the burly man's program, and he actually had no intention of hiding it. Karen nodded. Yes, they are all in North Blue. It makes no sense that the Germa Kingdom has not said hello to Don Quixote. Maybe there has been a conflict long ago. Karen continued to ask. Do you know where the Don Quixote family's headquarters is? This is an important purpose of his coming to North Blue, and he will never forget the hatred of those who followed his crew. I know, The burly man was halfway through speaking and did not continue. Because a man wearing a metal helmet and long golden hair appeared behind him. He is Vinsmoke Judge. Chapter 216 Angry Smoker Advertisement. Marine. Judge first looked at the surrounding environment and frowned slightly when he saw the soldiers falling to the ground. Then, he turned his attention to Karen, who was asking questions. Phew. It's not easy, I finally met the rightful owner. Karen breathed out a sigh of relief in her heart, and then led Smoker and Manchili in the direction of Judge. I am Major General of Marine Headquarters, Kukulo Cullen, you should have heard my name. This is not because Karen is arrogant. After he defeated the Golden Lion, he believed that anyone who is a qualified leader should have heard his name. This is Karen, no, it is the gold content of the Golden Lion. This is also the reason why those of the younger generation are so keen to challenge the strong ones of the older generation, because it is really easy to gain fame in this sea. Sure enough, as Karen's name appeared, Judge was slightly startled, and then his eyes locked tightly. Karen's name was the subject of discussion during this period. This is a ruthless man who defeated the Golden Lion alone. Are you Karen? Judge still couldn't believe it. Although he already knew that Marine's most dazzling star was very young, he really didn't expect him to be so young. Karen nodded. It's me, the Conquerors from earlier? Me too. Judge suddenly lost his initial anger. He had worked with Vegapunk in MADS, so he had naturally seen the horror of the truly strong. Just like now, although he has mastered blood factor technology and clone technology, his goal is only to unify North Blue and has no ambition to dominate the world. His marriage to the Big Mom pirates in the anime was also just to regain dominance over North Blue. And he dominates North Blue just for revenge, to take revenge on the North Blue countries. But what kind of hatred is specific, Karen doesn't know. Apparently Judge believes that the decline of Germa is related to the North Blue countries. The judge's expression was uncertain, and he didn't know what he was thinking. But the four modified people behind him didn't understand how scary Karen was, or in other words, they didn't know what being scary was at all. You were the ones who defeated our soldiers. Advertisement. The red-haired Vinsmoke IG was the first to speak out. He had a fierce face and was gearing up for Karen. Judge seemed to be still deep in thought and didn't stop him. Seeing that his father seemed to acquiesce to his actions, IG shouted excitedly to Smoker. Hey, you must be their boss. Well, it seems that Judge only modified their strength, not their IQ. Smoker glanced at Karen, his head full of black lines. Child, first of all, I didn't say hello. Secondly, we are talking to your father. Why are you so rude? Smoker's tone was slightly cold and he looked a little impatient. They've wasted too long here. Damn it, you dare to look down on me. Facing Smoker's rebuke, Ichi's eyes became more fierce, like an enraged beast. He clenched his fist tightly, making a crisp joint sound, and then without hesitation, he slammed it towards Smoker's face. When Smoker saw this, he raised the corners of his eyes slightly, feeling secretly surprised. He originally thought that Ig was just an impulsive and ignorant little devil, but he didn't expect that his attack speed would be so fast. As a result, Smoker reacted quickly and instinctively took a step back, trying to avoid Ichi's attack. Unfortunately, due to the suddenness of the incident, Smoker failed to anticipate that Ig would take action suddenly. Moreover, he somewhat underestimated the enemy. After all, the opponent was just a child. Although Smoker dodged in time, Ichi's fist still grazed his cheek, leaving a slight blood stain. Although this blow did not cause substantial damage to Smoker, it made his face darken instantly. Karen glanced at Smoker and groaned inwardly, "Brother, where's your elementalization?" As a Logia, Karen felt embarrassed for him when he was injured by a child who had not mastered the weapon color. Not to mention the person involved, Smoker stared at Ig with anger flashing in his eyes, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Smoker took a deep breath, trying to suppress his anger, and then looked at Judge across the way, but Judge was still contemplative and didn't seem to care about the things in front of him. "Since you don't have a tutor, let me educate you for you lousy." Seeing that the judge on the other side didn't respond at all, Smoker's anger was ignited again. He was not a good-tempered person to begin with, but now he was hurt by a child, and the other person's family did nothing. This indifferent attitude made his anger instantly rush to his forehead. "Advertisement, educate me. It's up to you." Ig looked at the wound on Smoker's cheek, raised the corners of his mouth, and revealed a contemptuous smile, his tone full of pride. Then, he followed the same pattern again, sprinted, clenched his fists and galloped towards Smoker. Smoker was so happy that he didn't even use elementalization. He also clenched his fists and stood there, clashing with Ig. Bang! As soon as Ig's fist touched Smoker's fist, a powerful force burst out from Smoker's fist, knocking Ig away. How is this possible? Ig looked at Smoker in shock. He had no idea that Smoker was so powerful. Smoker looked at Ig coldly and said, "Boy, you are too weak." After saying that, he rushed towards Ig again, ready to teach him a lesson. Smoker was extremely fast and arrived in front of Ig in the blink of an eye. Just when he was about to take action, two figures suddenly appeared on both sides of him, attacking Smoker with their fists and kicks. Smoker's face changed slightly, and he had to give up attacking Ig, and turn sideways to avoid the two men's attacks. After he landed on his feet, he took a closer look and found that the attackers were two other imps. Niji with blue hair and Yuji with green hair. The people of the Germa family do not pay attention to the glory of battle. The education they receive has only one core, and that is to win by any means necessary. As long as it can defeat the opponent, any method is allowed. Naturally, they did not start the fight against Smoker to help their brother. They all wanted to prove themselves in the power of the Germa family. Yangji said, "I heard that you want to educate us on our father's behalf. It's ridiculous. Who do you think you are?" Niji also echoed, "Yes, this will let you see how powerful we are." Reiju hesitated for a moment and stood up, "Use the battlesuit." Ig, who was lying on the ground, got up and his body appeared out of thin air in a red combat uniform. This is also Vinsmoke family technology. Karen's eyes lit up, she didn't expect it to be developed so early. "This is a good thing, but I don't know if it can be mass-produced. You can ask Vegapunk when you go back." Chapter 217. You came at the right time. Advertisement. Just when the other three were about to press the cylindrical tank that stored the combat uniforms, Judge finally spoke up. "Enough." His voice was deep and irresistible. The four members of IG immediately stopped attacking Smoker, but they still looked obviously dissatisfied and unwilling. "Major General Karen, I don't know why you came to my little Germa kingdom. We probably didn't offend you." Judge walked slowly towards Karen, his body slightly bent. "Of course not, I just happened to be passing by, but I was really rude." Karen pointed at the replica soldiers who were stunned by his own overlord energy, and said apologetically, "I'm sorry for them, but please don't worry, they were not injured, they were just temporarily unconscious." Judge still looked indifferent and said calmly, "I was negligent in this matter. Normally they wouldn't be like this. It's just that my wife unfortunately left me forever today, so I arranged for these soldiers to be on guard. Once an unidentified person is found, we immediately launched an attack, please forgive me." His posture was very low, and he did not look down upon Karen because he was only a major general. Karen's mind moved. Judge's wife is also Sanji's mother. So, Sanji, the third prince of Germa, will soon be exiled by Judge. Sanji. Karen is in urgent need of talents, and he also has some ideas for Sanji, but not now, because Sanji is obviously not at his most desperate yet. It's not that Karen is heartless and insists on letting Sanji suffer too much. It's just that if you want to gain someone's trust, it's best to wait until he is in the most desperate situation to help him. After all, what he is going to do in the future is very dangerous. "I see, I'm sorry, we came at the wrong time." Karen bowed slightly, although he looked down on Judge's education methods and his ideas, but the other party gave him such respect, Karen naturally wouldn't take his stance too high. After all, it was him who was abrupt in the final analysis. No, you came just in time. Judge seemed to have thought of something. He began to look at Karen up and down with a very serious expression. In the end, there was even a hint of excitement on his face. Karen was stunned by his words at first, and then felt uncomfortable with his gaze. What does this *hole mean? He doesn't have any quirks. Advertisement, does he covet my body? Thinking of this, he took a few steps away from Judge. Then he coughed lightly and asked, what do you mean? Judge's demeanor changed 180 degrees from the previous indifference, and he became extremely excited. That's right, Karen, I want to seek cooperation with you. Karen asked. Cooperation? Judge thought for a moment and said slowly, actually, I have mastered a bloodline factor technology. I want to use your bloodline factor to conduct a research. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. This was a powerful being who could defeat the Golden Lion. If he could master Karen's bloodline factor, his clone army and human transformation plan would undergo qualitative changes. He didn't notice that Karen's face was getting darker and darker, and he was still talking to himself. I think you should have noticed that my children are actually modified people. Due to the transformation of their bloodline factors, they're born with a stronger body. As he spoke, he pointed at Smoker and continued. This allows them to face an adult Marine without fear even when they are still children, and even gain some advantages. Smoker. Karen's face became increasingly gloomy, and he interrupted. You mean, you want to extract my blood factors and then carry out similar transformations? That's right. Judge made no secret of his excitement. Imagine if I could combine your bloodline factors with my technology to create a new type of warrior. What a great achievement it would be. That's enough. Karen interrupted impatiently. He didn't want his blood to fall into the hands of an evil scientist or a fanatical war fighter, and he didn't want all kinds of war weapons created from his blood to appear in the world. Moreover, he still looks down upon Judge's skills. If he wants to, he believes that Vegapunk will definitely help him. I don't care what you said. I came here today just to ask for directions. Karen said coldly. Only then did Judge wake up from his excitement. He was slightly stunned and said unwillingly. Are you really not thinking about it? I don't want to repeat it a second time, I just want to ask for directions. Judge's fists began to clench unconsciously, his expression was gloomy, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Advertisement Karen stared at him expressionlessly, expecting him to take action on the spot. Then he could force him to do so. Judge held it for a long time, thinking about the rumors about Karen, and finally loosened his fist. Well, Karen, I'm sorry that I couldn't reach a cooperation with you. He returned to his original deepness and majesty and continued. So, Major General Cullen, what path do you want to ask? Karen shook her head in disappointment and said coldly, I want to know the information about Don Quixote and the location of Rosewood Island. Judge's mind moved, and he realized that Karen's target was actually the Don Quixote family. Like the Kingdom of Germa, the Don Quixote family made their fortune through war. It's just that Germa is a mercenary, and the Don Quixote family is the largest arms dealer in the North Blue. He also wanted to do the arms business before, but at that time Don Quixote had gradually risen, and he got reliable information that Don Quixote had a great relationship with the Tianlong people above. So he chose to give up fighting for the arms business with Don Quixote, but this did not mean that they did not cooperate. He is a scientist, and part of the Don Quixote family's armament was purchased from him. It is precisely because of these technologies that Don Quixote has risen so quickly and become the most influential underground organization in the North Blue. Speaking of which, he still has a cooperative relationship with Don Quixote. What is your connection to the Don Quixote family? Judge asked. If Karen and Don Quixote were in a cooperative relationship, he could just mention the plan again. If not. A cold light flashed in Judge's eyes. Don Quixote's Doflamingo was not easy to mess with. He just happened to watch dog bite dog. Whether it is a victory for Karen or a victory for Don Quixote, it is good news for the Kingdom of Germa. Relationship? Ha ha ha, they and I are very good. Karen suddenly laughed, but his smile was as cold as winter ice. Enemy. Chapter 218 Corazon, Rosinante advertisement. Of course, my friend, I will be happy to provide you with information about the Don Quixote family. Judge also smiled, and it was obvious that he was smiling from the bottom of his heart. So, he began to introduce Karen to the Don Quixote family in detail. The boss of the Don Quixote family is called Don Quixote Doflamingo. He is a very ambitious young man. I can see that his intention is not only North Blue. He has the ambition to dominate the world. At the same time, like you, he also owns Conqueror's Domineering. Their family is represented by playing cards. Their Joker Doflamingo, and 4 important cadres, Club Torbal, Spades Pica, Diamond Diamante and the newly returned heart, Corazon, Rosinante. Rosinante? Smoker blurted. Then, he looked at Karen, who shook his head slightly to signal him not to get excited. What, you know him? Judge asked. No, I don't know. Smoker shook his head quickly. Karen asked with interest. I have heard about his Doflamingo's younger brother? Yes, that's right. I heard that he was separated from Doflamingo due to the war when he was a child. After many years, he returned to the Don Quixote family. It seems that he still has battle wounds. He is mute. Judge is obviously very concerned about the Don Quixote family and he knows a lot of information about the Don Quixote family. Smoker was visibly relieved to learn that Don Quixote Rocinante was mute. Karen continued to ask. That's it, please continue. Judge continued. The Don Quixote family is headquartered on Rubic Island. They travel between black and white and engage in illegal activities such as drugs, human trafficking, and selling large quantities of murder weapons in the underground society. They are truly the scum of the North Blue. After knowing that Karen had a grudge against Don Quixote, Judge did not mind telling Karen more information about Don Quixote. As for the partnership, haha, this is North Blue. A truly dirty sea where noble people cannot survive. Karen rolled his eyes and secretly complained, isn't your kingdom of Germa 66 also notorious in North Blue? Don't think I don't know what a symbol of evil Germa 66 is in North Blue. Karen knew that the most feared person in North Blue was right in front of him. Even though the judge in front of him was so polite, he was actually the one who led the Germa kingdom and triggered the killing of the 4 kingdoms of North Blue event. People. He once beheaded all the heads of the 4 kingdoms of North Blue, and painted a giant painting to commemorate the incident. And the way he behaves in front of Karen now is just his disguise. As for Rosewood Island, if I remember correctly, it was captured by Don Quixote's forces the day before yesterday, and now it belongs to Don Quixote as well. When Judge said this, he glanced at the only soldier still standing and ordered, help me take out a copy of the eternal pointers of Lubeck Island and Rosewood Island. Advertisement, yes. After receiving the order, the burly man quickly turned around and left. Thank you. Karen thanked him. Judge smiled stiffly and suggested, haha, this is just a simple task. How about this? It's almost noon, why don't we chat while we're at it? Need not. Before Karen could finish speaking, his stomach suddenly made a gurgling sound. Huh? I'm not hungry. Karen pulled Mansili out from hiding in his arms. Mansili covered her face, looking very embarrassed. Then, she said confidently, Karen, your stomach is ringing. Karen's head was covered with black lines, and his stomach was ringing. Why didn't he know? This is... Judge stared at Mansili and exclaimed, Dongdada clan? Karen was also a little surprised, because few people knew that the small human race was called the Dongdada clan, but she didn't expect Judge to know. Do you know our tribe? Mansili was also very surprised. Yes, to be honest, I'm also very interested in your family, if possible, I hope. No, Karen interrupted directly. Well, that's a shame. How about my previous proposal? Judge looked at Karen expectantly, but this look was very awkward no matter how you looked at it. It seemed that the expectant look should not appear on Judge. Karen took out a dried meat from his coat pocket, handed it to Manchuri, and said slowly, I've wasted too long here. I want to leave as soon as possible. Advertisement. If it weren't for Roderick's safety, Karen wouldn't mind staying here for a while. Thinking of his old friend with scars on his face, he felt a sense of urgency in his heart. And the Monet sisters he mentioned, could it be them? The clone executed the order quickly, and after a while he sent out 2 eternal pointers. Karen reached out and took it, thanking him again. Then without looking back, he jumped onto the broad back of the bird and galloped towards the beautiful island. Judge just stared blankly at Karen, who was left with only a black spot. Father, I don't think there is any need to be so polite to him. IG muttered, his face still full of dissatisfaction. Judge glanced at him coldly and said slowly, you are still young and don't understand the terror of the Golden Lion. His ability to defeat the Golden Lion is not as simple as it seems on the surface. I think they are all in vain. Look at that adjutant, if I use the combat uniform, he may not be my opponent. With that said, IG lit out the battlesuit gun again. The fiery red combat uniform instantly surrounded his whole body, and at the same time, a flame jumped out from his palm. Damn Marine, if I use the power of the battlesuit. Hole, who told you to use it without permission? Judge said angrily, do you know that we haven't fully mastered the technology of combat uniforms yet, and using it without permission is likely to cause irreversible damage to your body? But, didn't Father tell us that we should fight by any means necessary? IG raised his head stubbornly and looked into Judge's angry eyes, without fear. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter, as long as you can win. Hole. Judge kicked IG away as he tried to talk back. If you die before you can play your original role, do you know what a loss it is to our Germa kingdom? IG fell heavily to the ground, but quickly stood up again. He lowered his head, not knowing what he was thinking. Reiju, Niji and Yuji beside him were watching all this in a daze, and no one thought there was anything wrong with what Judge did. Obeying orders is engraved in their bones from birth. Judge's eyes wandered around the 4 people, and he whispered, don't worry, we have already studied this technology to the extreme. It won't be long before you can use it freely. This is the most precious legacy your mother left for you. Chapter 219 Rosewood Island Advertisement Rosewood Island. The sky was low and depressing, and the air was filled with smoke from artillery fire. Roderick took the 2 girls and hid in the ruins destroyed by artillery fire, with an indescribable tiredness in his eyes. This is already the 2nd day after the men in black invaded Rosewood Island. The war is nearing its end. Rosewood Island has gone from being bustling and lively at the beginning to being devastated today, with broken cement and leaning steel bars everywhere. They had spent the night smoothly, and they had not been discovered at all, but these were easily solved by the two Monet sisters. Just when Roderick was about to share the food in his arms with the two people who were already starving, the sound of heavy footsteps suddenly wandered around their hiding place. Roderick's heartbeat began to accelerate. He stopped taking out the food and whispered to the two girls, "We have to stay quiet and don't make any noise." He squeezed their hands tightly, fearing that they would make a sound out of fear. "Haven't you found those two girls yet?" Not far from them, a group of men in black stopped and talked in low voices, with anxiety and impatience in their voices. "No," another man in black responded coldly, with a low voice and a hint of disappointment. "Oh, it's really troublesome. It's such a small island, where can they hide?" The former sighed, with helplessness in his tone. "Maybe they have died in the war," another man in black said casually. "Probably not," the former frowned, with a hint of doubt in his voice. "I heard that they are all ability users who have eaten devil fruits, so they shouldn't die in such a simple war." "I really don't understand the bad taste of those nobles," another man in black shook his head, with confusion in his voice. "That's a devil fruit worth 100 million belly, just let the slaves eat it, already?" The former smiled in a low voice and said, "I heard from a cousin of mine who is at the top of the family that the two of them were trained and given to the Tianlong people. The Tianlong people like this." "Ha ha ha, that's it." Another man in black also laughed. "I have also heard that the price of slaves in the market is frighteningly high, especially those with special abilities and rare races. Isn't it because of Black Crow Lei Feng? He saved the slaves who were originally in Marijoya. Those adults will naturally add a new batch. Haha, thanks to him, our family's slave business is getting better and better. What kind of reward do you think the family will give us if we can find them too?" "You do not know? Advertisement, have no idea. Sir Diamante has already said that as long as those two girls can be found, they will be given at least a cadre status, and then they will be guaranteed to have enough food and clothing for the rest of their lives. I'm so motivated." As they moved further away, the sounds became indistinct. "Wait until the sound disappears completely." Roderick exhaled heavily, and the tension in his heart dissipated a lot. "We have to move to another place, it is no longer safe here." Roderick lowered his voice and whispered. "Okay." The two green-haired girls nodded slowly. The younger girl was still a little ignorant, but the older Monet had already understood through the conversation just now that the targets of the men in black were her and her sister. They also have to bring the two of them to that hell-like scene. Roderick immediately took action. He moved carefully and tried to avoid making any noise. "Follow me and don't separate. I'll try to stay away from them and find a safe place." The two girls immediately carefully followed Roderick's steps and moved slowly. They walked along the ruins for nearly 10 minutes. Suddenly, Roderick felt that his feet became twisted, and the originally uneven road began to twist left and right as if it was full of life. Not only the road, he was horrified to find that all the surrounding buildings began to twist. It was like they were in a space made of silk. Roderick's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He immediately stopped and held the two girls' hands tightly. "Don't be afraid, stay calm." Although he said this, his voice was trembling, as if he was trying his best to suppress the fear in his heart. The walls of the building undulate like waves, and the ground is like soft satin, making it difficult to stand firmly. Roderick felt dizzy, as if the whole world was spinning. Thump! The younger girl lost her balance first and fell to the ground. If Roderick hadn't been holding her hand tightly, she might have been swept aside by these streams like buildings. Advertisement, younger sister, Monet couldn't help but exclaimed. After hearing her shout, the walls shook even more violently, and after a while, the three of them were violently thrown out. When Roderick got up from the ground, he found a man wearing a fur hat, two facial lines on his face, and a red cloak standing in front of him. The man was smiling, and with the red mark on his face, he looked like a ferocious aborigine. Roderick's heart tightened as he recognized the man in front of him. He is none other than Diamante, the Don Quixote family member. "Diamante!" Roderick exclaimed. "Ha ha ha, it turns out you were here, so I found you." Diamante carefully looked at the two little girls in front of her, completely ignoring Roderick directly in front of her. Monet helped his sister sugar up, his face full of despair. "Are we going back to that hell again? Ha ha ha, don't look at me like that. I won't hurt you. I think you should know our Don Quixote family." Diamante took 2 steps forward with great satisfaction and continued. "Dover has said that our Don Quixote family is on the rise and is in a period of shortage of people. What do you think? Do you want to follow us?" Although it was a question, his tone held that he could not be disobeyed. "Our young master is not a person who likes to be rejected. I think you who live in North Blue should know this." Monet came back to his senses and said coldly, "I don't know. Since her parents were killed by those dirty big shots, she and her sister have been living as slaves. They didn't know much about the situation in North Blue. They only had fear and hatred for those nobles who were above them." "Oh, it's really interesting." Diamante chuckled. "I like little girls with personality, but I have already said that our young master is not a person who likes to be rejected, and following our Don Quixote family, you will to have endless wealth and power instead of just living in an ignoble way like now." "We don't need your charity," Roderick said angrily. "We would rather die than become your slaves." Diamante snorted, and the ground under Roderick's feet instantly became distorted. Roderick was swallowed up by the rough ground again, lost his balance and fell to the ground. Chapter 220 Colonel Cullen advertisement, Roderick. Monet hurriedly ran towards Roderick, and then a stone wall at a 90-degree angle appeared strangely on the road beneath her feet, blocking her progress. Ha ha ha, I don't like to listen to the noise of irrelevant people when I'm talking. The pavement under Diamante's feet began to twitch, and soon his position changed. He was already in front of Monet, and said with a smile, "How about you, do you want to join us?" He leaned close to Monet's ear and whispered, "I really can't think of any reason for you to reject us. Know that countless North Blue people dream of joining our Don Quixote family." Monet looked at his sister, seeming hesitant. At this moment, Roderick shouted loudly, "Don't listen to him, Monet, take the sugar and leave here. I have called my friend to help. He will be here soon." His body moved up and down on the road, and his voice was erratic, but firm enough. Don Quixote is the largest black organization in the North Blue, and they have a slave trade industry. When she heard the word slave, the hesitation on Monet's face turned into determination, and she said coldly, "I won't join you, let Roderick go, otherwise." Diamante asked nonchalantly, "What else, otherwise I will be rude to you." "Oh, interesting, so what can you do?" Monet gritted her teeth, and then a chill began to spread around her body. Then snowflakes seemed to be falling from the sky, and the temperature in the air dropped suddenly. "Is this the Logia snow fruit?" Diamante said with great interest. "The royal family of Rosewood Island is really willful. In order to please the celestial dragons, they would give you this rare fruit. What a waste. No wonder Dove is so excited. This is Logia. It's a rare fruit that even our family doesn't have. It's really scary." Monet pretended to be calm and said coldly, "It's okay if you know you're afraid. Let Roderick go as soon as possible." "Afraid? Ha ha ha." Diamante seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world, and he bent over with laughter. "The ignorant are fearless. Come on, let me see how far you can go." Monet took a deep breath. The power brought by the snow fruit flowed through her body, and the cold breath gradually dispelled her fear. "You'll regret it." As she spoke, a ball of cold air began to gather in her hands, the air around her cooled down rapidly, and snowflakes swirled around her. Advertisement the next moment, the snowflakes in the sky swept towards Diamante as if they were alive. Diamante just watched quietly, neither dodging or resisting. Ice and snow quickly spread across Diamante's body, freezing him into an ice sculpture. Logia's power cannot be easily resisted even by an undeveloped girl. Monet breathed a sigh of relief. Just when she thought victory was within reach, the corners of Diamante's mouth in the ice and snow made a slight arc. Then, in Monet's shocked eyes, the ice and snow placed on his body slipped away one after another. "Yes, if you face an ordinary person, I'm afraid there's really nothing I can do against you." He slowly walked out of the ice and snow and said with a ferocious smile, "But, I am a senior cadre of Don Quixote." As he spoke, the ground beneath Monet's feet surged, and Monet was soon knocked upside down to the ground. Lousy is the flagman who ate the flying fruit. Elder sister, Sugar, who was next to Monet, squatted down and tried to pull Monet out of the ground, but she couldn't do it with her weak body. "Forgot, there is you. What kind of ability do you have, childlike fruit, right?" When Granu heard this, she ran towards Diamante risking her life, and soon she touched Diamante's calf. A smile flashed in his eyes, and his ability was activated. But soon, she stared at Diamante who had no reaction, full of shock. "How is that possible? The ability has failed. What a cute little sister. The power of devil fruit is not invincible in this sea." Diamante chuckled, and another stone wall slowly rose up, wrapping the sugar in it. Immediately afterwards, the stone wall surrounding the two people tightened, sending them in front of Diamante. He clapped his hands happily. "Yes, now there are two more ability users in the family, and one of them is a rare Logia. Dover will be very happy." He said that he would take the two of them out of here. Seeing him about to leave, Roderick shouted again, "Let them go, old man, I'm giving you some face, right? If it weren't for the fact that you have some relationship with them, I would have killed you long ago." Diamante, who was interrupted, said dissatisfiedly, with murderous intent in her eyes appearing and disappearing. Advertisement. After hesitating for a moment, he finally decided to let him live. So he turned and left again. "Kill me? Do you dare? Kill me, Karen will definitely not let you go." Roderick shouted angrily. Hearing this, Diamante paused slightly. He turned around slowly, his expression no longer as relaxed as before. "Who are you talking about?" A simple sentence, but the murderous intention emerged like spring water. Of course he knew what Karen's name meant, that was the man their young master had always been thinking about. Colonel Cullen. Seeing his reaction, Roderick roared excitedly. In his heart, Karen was the strongest. He had seen with his own eyes that Karen killed his men despite the threat of Doflamingo. "Colonel." Diamante frowned slightly. He was a little unsure whether the Karen mentioned by the scarred old man in front of him was the one he knew. "If it's really him," Diamante asked, "is it the marine hero Cuculo Cullen who came from the East China Sea and defeated the Golden Lion?" Roderick was stunned because he didn't know whether the Karen Diamante mentioned was the Karen he knew. But he knew that Karen was indeed from the East China Sea. "That's right, it's him. I've already contacted him. If you have some sense, let us go immediately. He won't be afraid of the Don Quixote family. Not even afraid of Doflamingo. Bang! The silk ground immediately wrapped Roderick up and brought him to Diamante. A sly smile appeared on the corner of Diamante's mouth, and a sinister light flashed in her eyes, forcing him to look directly into her eyes. Ha ha ha, interesting. I didn't expect there would be an unexpected gain. What is your relationship with him? He knew that his young master was worried about Karen, and now he found someone related to Karen, which made him feel extremely excited. If his friends or family were threatened, then Karen would definitely take action. He has solved an annoying problem for his young master. At this moment, a raptor's cry suddenly came from the sky, and then a cold voice came from the sky. I shouldn't be late, Mr. Roderick. Chapter 221 called Doflamingo again. Advertisement. Diamante stopped what she was doing and stared at the big black bird hovering in the sky. Karen stood firmly on the bird's back with a smile on her face. Are you Karen? Diamante's expression was a little stiff. He had heard Karen's name countless times in the family, but this was the first time he actually met Karen. He is exactly the same as the image in the newspaper, young and strong. Karen jumped directly from Gu Woshao's body, and a white smoke condensed behind him to look like Smoker. It's finally here. Smoker couldn't help but sigh as soon as he landed. Karen glanced at Diamante coldly, and the murderous intent in his eyes seemed to be rushing towards Diamante. Diamante felt as if she was being stared at by a ferocious beast, and her legs began to tremble uncontrollably. Is this the Marine who defeated the legendary pirate? The aura about him was much stronger than that of his young master. Karen asked in a low voice, what are you going to do to my friend? When Diamante mentioned the word friend, he seemed to think of something. He suddenly pulled out a long sword from his waist and pressed it firmly against Roderick's neck. Ha ha ha, Mr. Marine, your friend is in my hands, I advise. Before he finished speaking, his eyes blurred, and when he came to his senses, he was horrified to find that he had dropped his long sword on the ground. As for himself, he knelt down in front of Karen while maintaining a very funny movement. Is this the Yi Sword Immortal kneeling down? Although he had known the rumors about Karen for a long time, he only discovered how powerful his opponent was when he actually faced him. Karen looked down at Diamante, without any emotion in his tone. What is your advice? Diamante took a deep breath, subconsciously surrounded Quan Chi with armed colors, and tried to stand up from this weird posture. But this was a move that even the Golden Lion and other truly strong men could not resist. How could he stand up? Seeing that he was not armed, he had no time to think more, so he began to use the ability of the flying fruit to affect the surrounding terrain. But soon, he discovered that his flying fruit could not change the environment around Karen. Only domineering overrides everything else. How could his dominance be compared to Karen's? Advertisement. He was completely desperate. Karen said disdainfully, the power of devil fruit is not invincible. Diamante's face turned green and purple for a while. He had said this to Sugar just now, but unexpectedly, only a minute later, Karen returned the same sentence. Misunderstandings are all misunderstandings. He quickly begged for mercy loudly. We Don Quixote have no ill intentions. I just want to bring your friends to visit our Don Quixote family. Karen snorted coldly. Really, but I don't think so. Really, our family has a completely friendly attitude towards you, and we are very happy about your arrival. Diamante smiled sarcastically, sweat dripping down her face. Karen took Zhang Feng back and said calmly, so you are telling me that taking my friend hostage to your family is your Don Quixote's way of hospitality? Feeling the force exerted on her body dissipate, Diamante's eyes flashed with joy, and she stood up from the ground carefully. Sisters Roderick and Monet Sugar were then sent to Karen. As soon as he was put down, Roderick immediately looked at Karen with Monet and Sugar in surprise. Karen nodded to the three of them with a smile. It's really Monet and Sugar. Although he had already guessed it, Karen was still a little surprised. She was so sleepy that she gave her a pillow. This time he has added 2 more potential stalks to his camp. Karen values Monet more than Sugar, of course not because of her logia fruit, but because she is a female secretary with outstanding abilities. Monet and Sugar seemed very unnatural being stared at, and Karen realized that she was being a little abrupt. Then, he grabbed Manchili from his shoulders and said softly, help me see if they have received any damage, and treat them by the way. Manchili nodded seriously and quickly ran towards the 2 people who looked wary. Look them up and down. Monet and Sugar were also attracted by Manchili's cute appearance, and were slightly less wary of Karen and his group. Cute people are naturally more approachable than other people. There is nothing wrong with them, they are just a little malnourished. They can just take more supplements and they will be fine. Manchili came to the conclusion. His little face was very serious, and he had the air of an old Chinese doctor. Then, she looked at Roderick and frowned slightly. Advertisement. Then she rubbed her eyes and took off a dandelion-like tear. With a wave of her hand, the dandelion floated towards Roderick's body. Roderick stared at this scene blankly, and then a warm light wandered around his body, and he couldn't help but moan in comfort. The knife marks on his face went from terrifying to dim and then completely disappeared, and the whole person looked very energetic. So comfortable, he couldn't help but marvel. The originally rickety body became much straighter. A miracle, doctor. He gave a thumbs up. Manchili was a little embarrassed by the praise, and her cheeks were slightly red. What an amazing sister. Monet marveled at this magical scene. Manchili, who was embarrassed at being praised one after another, became arrogant. She raised her chin and her eyes shone with confidence. But, I am the most powerful doctor in our Dantata clan. Diamante, who suffered from an occupational disease, couldn't help but calculate the value of Manchili in her mind, a special race plus devil fruit ability user. The lowest market price is 100 million belly. In the Don Quixote family everything has a price. Okay, Diamante, right? Karen suddenly spoke, interrupting the dangerous thoughts in Diamante's mind. Yes, my lord. Diamante immediately came back from her thoughts, and then remembered that her life was still in the hands of the seemingly immature young man in front of her. Very well, I think you wouldn't mind giving Doflamingo a call for me. Karen seemed to be smiling but not smiling and said casually. Ah, no, I don't mind. The young master will be very happy to know that you are here. Diamante straightened her body, hesitated for a moment, took out the phone from her arms, and dialed. Bulu bulu bulu. After ringing for only 5 seconds, the phone was answered by the other party. Ha! Diamante, have those two girls been caught? Chapter 222 Confrontation Advertisement. The cold sweat on Diamante's face instantly fell down all over his body. He subconsciously wanted to say something, but was stopped by a look like a piercing light. The atmosphere became silent. After a full minute, Doflamingo's sinister laughter came from the phone again. Bah! Interesting, is Diamante dead? No. No. Diamante replied subconsciously. Karen chuckled, took the phone, and said softly. Soon. Diamante's expression instantly froze on her face, and she became at a loss again. Karen? Doflamingo actually recognized Karen's voice? Karen raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, You have a good memory, I thought you had forgotten it. Hey, you're here faster than I thought. Doflamingo laughed and said, but he didn't know if his mood was really as real as his smile. Oh, when do you think I'm going to come? We have to wait until Marine's award ceremony at the earliest. Awards? You don't know? Doflamingo seemed surprised. He smiled again. Bah, 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 bah. Marine really doesn't know how to do things. How can we forget our great hero? Karen frowned slightly. He had indeed never heard of any award ceremony. I have a vague feeling in my heart. There's no reason for a pirate to know more about Marine than Marine, unless. Have you contacted the celestial dragons? Ha. Smart. I like talking to smart people. Doflamingo smiled sinisterly and said, There's a surprise. Karen said calmly. Really? It seems you are ready. Of course. After all, it is a golden lion. I have no confidence in fighting a madman. Are you that confident? Karen, I know you hate me very much, and you are stronger than me, but this world does not only look at personal strength. Sometimes money is more important than strength, and you won't understand this. Advertisement. Doflamingo laughed loudly. Karen, I have said before that we are not enemies. Maybe we can become our own people in a few days. Own people. Karen was keenly aware of the important point, and a guess came to his mind. 7 Warlords of the Sea. A pirate organization that can legally plunder. Karen knew that 7 Warlords of the Sea was founded with 2 purposes in mind. Because of the beginning of the Great Pirate Age, more and more pirates appeared on the sea. Marine and world government gradually realized that military power alone could not completely control this sea area, so they began to seek a new balance method. The establishment of 7 Warlords of the Sea is precisely to use these powerful pirates to maintain the stability of the sea area, and at the same time legally plunder the wealth of other pirates to achieve a win-win situation. However, as time goes by, the system of 7 Warlords of the Sea gradually reveals its inherent contradictions and dangers. After being given legal status, the pirates became more and more unscrupulous and began to establish their own power in the sea. Their relationship with marine and world government even became subtle and complicated. They are all rebellious and have their own hidden agendas. At the same time, it also caused some Marines who originally wanted to be righteous to become disappointed with Marine. For example, Zepha, the pirate who killed his own students, suddenly turned out to have a legal identity, which made a man who devoted himself to Marine feel extremely sad. In the end, he led his students to establish a new Marine, hoping to return the world to zero. Karen came into this world and had not heard of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, because this was the early days of the Great Pirate Age. But according to what Doflamingo said, 7 Warlords of the Sea will be established soon. And he, Doflamingo, is going to join the 7 Warlords of the Sea. This is also different from Karen's memory, because in the original work, Doflamingo stole the heavenly gold dedicated to the celestial dragons from all over the world, and the world government had no choice but to let him join due to his identity as a celestial dragon. Ha! How about it, Karen? I'm not joking. The business I told you last time is still valid. If you cooperate with me, I guarantee that you will make a lot of money. Seeing that Karen didn't reply for a long time, Doflamingo laughed even more wildly. As for your men, I'm sorry, but you should also know that I was not in charge of that matter. I don't have that much energy. Of course, I can also compensate you. How about 2 billion belly? This is enough for the Marines who died in the Sabodi Islands. This is not a small amount. You can allocate it as you wish. It is also a savings that ordinary Marines cannot obtain in a lifetime. Don't focus on the dead, think about the living. A series of high-sounding words came from Doflamingo's mouth, and he said it so righteously and awe-inspiring, as if the matter itself was not a problem, and it was even a good thing for those who died in the Saboti Islands. Karen finally spoke, with a calm tone. You are right, I should really think about those who are alive. Advertisement, bah, bah, bah. That's right. Having money but not making money is the real problem with your brain. Don't worry, I will never break my promise. The money will be delivered to the living people soon. Karen's face suddenly turned ugly. He was not a fool. These words seemed to show Doflamingo's sincerity, but they were more of a threat. He raised his head sharply, suppressing his anger, and said, What do you mean? Hey, I said, I like smart people, I think you should know how to choose. Doflamingo's smile became more cheerful. His rhythmic tapping on the table can still be heard through the phone bug. Okay, very good. As expected of Heavenly Yaksha, he has means. The anger on Karen's face gradually subsided, and he chuckled softly. Can I understand that you are threatening me? Bah, bah, bah. Why bother speaking so clearly? Doflamingo's laughter echoed in the phone bug and continued. I don't think it's a threat. On the contrary, I just give you a choice. His voice was relaxed and casual, as if he was discussing a trivial matter. You can choose to continue to seek revenge from me, or cooperate with me and we will be prosperous together. Very good, you did teach me a lesson, but do you really dare to do it? It seems that your life is not equal to that of those who you think are untouchables. Gaba. The phone bug was hung up by Karen. His expression was gloomy, as if he could squeeze out water. Doflamingo was indeed much more cunning than he thought. But this does not mean that he will be led by Doflamingo. At this time, Diamante, who was listening carefully next to her, chuckled and said, Can first go, Marine. After listening to the whole story, his expression had already recovered from the anxiety just now. He felt that he was in a great mood, and following Dover was indeed the most correct choice in his life. He felt like he could do it again. However, he didn't know that Karen was in a very bad mood, so bad that he wanted to kill someone. Karen stared at him for a while, making him feel scared. Just when he was about to be unable to resist the depressing atmosphere, he heard Karen chuckle. Of course, I'll send you on your way, Mr. Diamante. Chapter 223 Good Eyesight Advertisement. Diamante turned around stiffly, with a smile on her face. No, don't bother you. Karen took out the Zhangfeng and didn't say a word, just looked at him with a smile. If Doflamingo thought that knowing Death's whereabouts in the Saboti Islands would be able to control him, he would be totally wrong. In this poker table, it was Karen who had the best card from beginning to end. Mr. Cullen, don't forget what Dover just said. If you kill me, Dover will definitely retaliate against you crazily. Seeing that Karen had no intention of communicating, Diamante said sternly. This is not bad. Looking at the entire plot, one of the reasons why Doflamingo attracts more fans than other villains is that he is pretty good with the leaders of his family. This is related to the fact that he has lost family ties since childhood, so he regards the cadres of his family as relatives. However, Doflamingo is a man who kills his true relatives for his own benefit. Karen didn't believe he would give up his life for a nominal relative. At the same time, Karen also wanted to tell him that he could not be easily manipulated by him. Diamante, right? Karen said slowly, her voice flowing like a clear spring. You know what? I hate being threatened, especially from those self-righteous guys. The smile on Diamante's face froze instantly, her heart tightened, and she said in a panic. No. No, it's not a threat, it's a reminder. He stammered in explanation, a thin layer of sweat forming on his forehead. You don't understand the relationship between me and Dover, I'm not. No, Diamante, I understand your relationship, so I'd better ask you to die. As he spoke, the armed color instantly wrapped around Zhang Feng's sword edge, and a sharp sword light flew towards Diamante's body. Although it was just a casual blow, the effect was extremely exaggerated. The light of the sword, which was more than 10 meters high, cut through the ground, leaving a terrifying ravine. The air around seemed to be torn apart, filled with a biting chill. Diamante watched the sword light dilate in his pupils. In a panic, he used the ability of the flying fruit to erect several stone walls from the ground. Unfortunately, those stone walls were like paper when facing Karen's sword light. They exploded instantly and turned into countless fragments flying around. Laugh. The sword light pierced Diamante's neck with an indomitable momentum. Blood slipped from his throat drop by drop. Advertisement. Diamante knelt weakly on the ground, covering her throat with both hands, trying to stop the blood that kept gushing out. His consciousness began to blur and he lost the characteristics of life. On his deathbed, he couldn't believe that he couldn't last even one round against Karen, let alone that Karen would be so decisive. This is the first step in revenge, Doflamingo. Zhangfeng transformed into the form of a bird again and landed on Karen's shoulder. Monet stared at this scene in a daze, his eyes filled with brilliance. It's amazing. Sugar screamed and looked at Karen with eyes full of admiration and amazement. Having lacked family protection since childhood, they felt a sense of security for the first time. That's right, Colonel Cullen is a big shot I knew in the East China Sea. Roderick was also very happy and proudly added, "The first time I met Colonel Cullen it was because of Don Quixote. I didn't expect that 3 years later, it would still be Don Quixote when we met again." Having said this, he looked at Karen and asked hurriedly, "By the way, Colonel Karen, how is Delica?" Karen slowly turned around and mentioned the beautiful mermaid lady. He also missed her a little. She has returned to the Fishman Island. "Well, thank you, Karen." Roderick thanked Karen again. "Haha, aren't we friends? Well, this is not a place for chatting. Let's leave first. I can't wait to know how you came to North Blue." Karen always behaves very cordially when facing people she knows well. "That's true, but it's a pity that there is no bar here." They both laughed at the mention of the bar. In the distance, the minions of the Don Quixote family who were patrolling finally discovered something strange here. They also discovered Monet and Sugar, who were being protected by Roderick. "Wow, ha ha ha, look, what did I find?" The minions walking in front were extremely excited and their pace sped up a lot. "It's them, finally found them. Ha ha ha, it's finally our turn to be rich and wealthy. Catch them quickly, this is the future of our lives." Advertisement. As if they had discovered a golden mountain, the minions happily ran towards Karen, completely missing Diamante who had fallen to the ground unconscious. Karen naturally noticed their arrival, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. The minion's voice was particularly clear in the lifeless atmosphere. In a short time, it spread from person to person and spread throughout the entire Rose Island. They either regretted or excitedly emerged from the ruins, all wanting to see who the two girls they had been looking for so hard to find were. The minions who first discovered Monet and Sugar came to them first and were about to reach out and pull them out. "Hey!" Smoker stretched out his hand to stop them. "Did you forget about us? Who are you?" The follower raised his head in confusion and said in shock, "Marine. Why is there a Marine here?" Smoker raised his forehead and said dissatisfiedly, "Lousy has always been here." "Haha, so what if it's Marine? Lousy represents Don Quixote." The minion looked disdainful. Smoker asked curiously, "Is Don Quixote really that powerful?" "Of course, in North Blue, you can mess with anyone, but as long as you dare to mess with this Don Quixote, then—" "Wait, you are not North Blue's Marine." The minions finally discovered what was unusual about Smoker. Good eyesight. Smoker gave an exaggerated thumbs up. Then, he pointed to Diamante who was lying on the ground and said with a smile, "I just don't know if you can recognize who he is." The minion glanced disdainfully at Diamante who fell to the ground and said arrogantly, "I don't care who he is, in North Blue, Lord Diamante." His eyes almost popped out, and then he immediately covered his mouth and whispered, "Why is Lady Diamante asleep here?" From the beginning to the end, he never doubted whether something happened to Diamante. After all, this was North Blue. Smoker patted his shoulder with satisfaction and reminded, "Let me tell you a secret, he is dead." "What?" I couldn't believe it. I said, "Your Lord Diamante is dead." Smoker spoke very loudly, and almost all the minions close to him heard what he said. Chapter 224. Next, it's my turn. Advertisement. The atmosphere instantly froze, and the originally chaotic battlefield became calm. They all followed Smoker's guidance and saw Diamante arriving at this place. After a full 30 seconds, a closer man had the courage to move towards Diamante. He stretched out his trembling hands and turned him over. In fact, he didn't need to turn him over because there were bloodstains around him. This is already the best proof. "Dead!" He screamed and collapsed to the ground, so scared that he even lost control of his urination. Naturally, he was not frightened by the sight of corpses. Corpses can be seen everywhere in North Blue. But this is a cadre of the Don Quixote family. His voice was like a thunder, instantly breaking the tranquility on the battlefield. The surrounding minions turned their heads one after another, their eyes filled with fear and uneasiness. "How is it possible? That's Mr. Cube. How could he die here? How could he die here?" "It was them, it was Marine. Marine killed Lady Diamante. They are devils. Run away. Escape." "Where to escape? The entire North Blue is under the control of the family. The cadre is dead, but we have not taken revenge. They will not let us go." "Yes, we want revenge, revenge. Only revenge can wash away the family's punishment." The panicked crowd quickly regained their composure. They stared at Karen and his group with burning eyes. The hatred and determination in their eyes seemed to be swallowing up everything. They knew that someone who could kill Diamante would never be easy to mess with, but the cruelty from their family gave them no choice. In order to survive, they must fight tooth and nail. Swish swish. They immediately raised their muskets and drew out the long knives at their waists. Always be prepared to fight tooth and nail. Monet and Sugar hid nervously behind Roderick. Although they knew that Karen was very powerful, they still couldn't help but feel a sense of fear in their hearts when faced with so many men with fierce looks. They can only place their only hope on Karen. Karen naturally would not let them down. He turned around with a gentle smile. "Don't be afraid, I will protect you." He doesn't mind showing his strong side in front of the two sisters. Only by bringing them a sense of security will they truly recognize him. Although he had already demonstrated part of his strength just now, it was far from shocking enough. This time, he wants to play a big one. Advertisement. After all, these people have sin in their hands, right? Boom. Suddenly there was a thunder in the sky, and the whole sky began to become dark and covered with dark clouds. What's going on? Is it going to rain? Don't worry so much, deal with these people first. Not only were the minions shocked, Monet and Sugar were also a little confused about the situation. Even Smoker was shocked. He knew that Karen was terrifyingly strong, but he didn't expect that Karen was so powerful. In order to achieve a shocking effect, Karen stretched out her palms and held them in the air in a very high-profile manner. Next, it's my turn. Boom! With Karen at the center, a domineering force that could sweep everything suddenly erupted, instantly compressing the surrounding air and making it distorted. The strong wind howled, picking up the sand and debris on the ground, like a tornado sweeping through. The minions rolled their eyes and fainted before they could figure out the situation. Those who are a little further away from Karen are better, and those who are closer to Karen are not just as simple as fainting. Scarlet blood began to ooze from their mouths, noses, ears, and eye sockets, and it seemed that they were no longer alive. Such a shocking scene was enough to leave a deep impression on the two girls' minds. Is this really something a human can do? Smoker couldn't help but lost his voice. Karen put down his arm, patted Smoker on the shoulder, and smiled. Come on, you can do it, you should. Can I really do that? Smoker doubted his talent and ability for the first time, and now he could barely even get started with his weaponry. Karen ignored Smoker, who was in doubt. He turned to look at Monet and chuckled. How are you? Did you get a shock? Monet nodded, then shook his head, looking at a loss. Granu released Roderick's hand and gently tugged on Karen's trousers. Big brother, you are so powerful, can you protect my sister and me from here? Karen reached out to touch her head, looked at Monet, and said seriously, of course, I'm planning to do that. Advertisement. After walking around, he really didn't find a suitable place to chat on Rosalie Island, so Karen asked Jiu Huoniao to carry the five of them to Shuangyan Island, not far from Rosalie Island. Finding a hotel at random, Karen took a group of people and sat down in a box downstairs. Soon, aroma after aroma filled the nostrils, and the waiter walked into the box carrying delicious dishes. The table was filled with delicious dishes that were both delicious and delicious. Karen looked at the two slightly embarrassed girls and chuckled. Let's get started. As Karen took the chopsticks first, the table instantly turned into a battlefield. The faces of Sugar and Monet instantly bloomed with expectant smiles, as if the horn of battle had already sounded. The two followed Karen's actions without hesitation and quickly jumped into the fight for delicious food. This is delicious. Sugar excitedly picked up a piece of pan-fried fish, her eyes twinkling. I have never eaten anything so delicious. Me too. Monet nodded, her mouth filled with delicious stir-fried vegetables. Her voice was swallowed up by the food. Her expression was full of satisfaction and joy. Smoker saw this and joined the fight, scrambling to start supplementing. Roderick looked at this scene and burst into tears for a while, feeling filled with emotion. Here, Karen has put down his knife and fork, and he has finished eating. The previous consumption was nothing to him. The meal lasted for a long time, until everyone's stomachs were bulging, and then the battle ended. I'm so satisfied. Roderick held his stomach and tried to digest. Me too. This is the first time in so many years that I feel so full. As she spoke, Sugar did not forget to stuff a few more grapes. She cried and said, There, I peeled grapes for them every day, but I have never tasted them as unscrupulously as today. The atmosphere became silent, and it was obvious that all three of them were thinking about the past that made them heartbroken. Monet stretched out his hand to gently brush away Sugar's tears, and said heartbrokenly, Okay, it's all over. We escaped, right? Sugar nodded seriously. Yeah, sister, we are out, I'm so happy. She finally couldn't help it, put down everything in her hands, and no longer concealed her inner vulnerability. The two girls vented their emotions in this box, as if they wanted to wash away all the pain of these years with tears. After about 10 minutes, the crying gradually subsided. Thank you, Mr. Cullen, they thanked Karen seriously. Karen handed the tissue to them with a smile, then looked at Roderick and whispered. Mr. Roderick, let us begin to hear your story of how you arrived at North Blue and met these two beautiful girls. Chapter 225. Excited Smoker advertisement. Next, Roderick briefly described to Karen how he came to North Blue from the East China Sea. After Karen left, Roderick thought about visiting other sea areas. His first stop was West Blue. The entire West Blue was full of culture and art. He lived here for a year and soon became tired of this peaceful life. So, he started his second journey. This time the purpose was North Blue. Unlike the elegance of West Blue, North Blue is full of crime. In North Blue, survival is more important than anything else. Blackmail, extortion, deception, and betrayal are all commonplace. On the first day he arrived, all the savings he had accumulated were defrauded. The next day, he was horrified to find that even he himself had been sold. Yes, he became a slave. And he is the most unpopular old slave. He is not as powerful as those young slaves. Being a slave without a strong body and outstanding talents is a very difficult thing, because it means that he is worthless. A worthless slave, his ending can be imagined. Fortunately, although Roderick is no longer young, he has adventure stories about the Grand Line and other sea areas. Coupled with a musical instrument he learned in West Blue, he became a bard among this slave group. His knowledge and adventure stories saved his life, and he was then bought at a high price to tell his story to the children of a royal family. As a result, he met two sisters, Monet and Sugar, who were both slaves. They were also attracted by Roderick's adventure stories, and soon they became friends and lived on Rosewood Island for nearly a year and a half. It wasn't until the Don Quixote family focused on Rosewood Island that they took advantage of the chaos to escape. On the way out, he found a phone bug and asked Karen for help. Speaking of which, if it weren't for Don Quixote, we don't know how long we would have stayed in that hell. Roderick smiled bitterly, and then he added, however, if it weren't for Don Quixote, I wouldn't be in this situation. Karen raised an eyebrow and asked, how can I say this? Are you bought by the Don Quixote people? This is not, it can only be said to be a relationship of insight. Roderick sighed and explained. Slavery is officially prohibited in the entire world, and of course it is also in North Blue, but when the Don Quixote family comes after North Blue, everything changed, as if overnight, the whole North Blue started a wave of human trafficking again. Don Quixote used money and power to easily shake the original law and order. They used various means to win over people's hearts, even those officials who were supposed to uphold justice. As a result, slavery resurrected in the dark, like a lurking lion majesty, ready to devour innocent souls. Speaking of this, Roderick's eyes seemed to be able to spit out fire. It was because Delica exposed her identity as a mermaid that she was imprisoned in the Shark Moonlight performance. Advertisement. Karen sighed, this is the cruelty of this world. There was nothing he could do to change anything. After listening to Roderick's story, Karen asked the three of them to go back and have a good rest. He and Smoker were the only ones left in the box. And Mangzili, who was sleeping soundly beside him. Smoker still had the cigar in his mouth, and his face was extremely gloomy. For him, who was born in the East China Sea since childhood, what happened to Roderick and the other three was completely beyond his understanding. Why is this happening? Smoker finally broke the silence, his voice low and suppressed. Karen didn't even raise his head and said softly, this is the dark side of the world. We have to do something. Smoker slammed the table and said loudly. Karen glanced at him and said calmly, what can you do? Eradicate the Don Quixote family, Smoker replied loudly and with an angry expression. After it's raised, will it be in another Don Quixote? Karen stared into Smoker's eyes, with an arc at the corner of his mouth, as if he was mocking Smoker and the whole world. Smoker was startled, then sat back on the chair weakly, stopped talking, and was lost in thought. After a while, Karen said calmly, the root of the problem is not Don Quixote. Smoker raised his head, waiting for Karen to speak again. There is a saying in my hometown that I think is very right. What words? There is no harm without buying and selling, and when the highest levels of power believe that there should be slavery, then no matter how many Don Quixote we eradicate, new oppressors will continue to pop up. So, what we have to do is not just eradicate Don Quixote, but change this rotten system. Karen continued, looking firmly at Smoker. Smoker's heart skipped a beat and he asked, what do you want to do? Karen didn't answer the question, he said with a smile. Who do you think is the top person in power? Advertisement, noble, king, Smoker blurted. Karen didn't speak, and glanced up intentionally or unintentionally. Heaven. Celestial dragon. Smoker stood up suddenly and stared at Karen's vague smile. Your purpose is to overthrow. Haha, I didn't say that. Karen looked at him with meaningful eyes, stopping Smoker's desire to continue talking. However, Smoker had no intention of stopping. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. At this time, he was no longer shocked at the beginning, and his eyes were only filled with excitement and excitement. He himself is a lord who fears neither heaven nor earth. This means that he is more receptive to Cullen's treacherous ideas than other Marines. So you said it's dangerous to follow you. It turns out you had this idea before you came here. When did it happen? Ha ha ha, I'm so excited, Karen, no matter what, please take me with you. Karen rolled her eyes at him. It is estimated that only Smoker can accept his idea easily. He is a person who is not bound by rules by nature. Karen, what do you think? Tell me your plan, I can't wait. Smoker excitedly circled Karen. Now he is just in his early 20s, when he is young and vigorous, full of passion and excitement for everything. Karen reached out and pulled him, pressed him on the chair, and chuckled. You can't help me now. Smoker immediately asked. Why? Because you were too weak. Karen's answer was unceremonious. Smoker opened his mouth, and finally lowered his head feebly. Karen was right, he was too weak now. Hateful. Lies don't hurt, the truth is the sharpest knife. Smoker clenched his fists, feeling an uncontrollable anger and determination surge in his heart. Okay. Let me talk about how to deal with Don Quixote.